And want to acknowledge that the land upon which you're all collectively gathering here for this evening's meeting is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. So, Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship.
And there are no announcements this evening. There is an addendum, and that has to do with the start time. It was supposed to be 5 o'clock. There was a special regional council meeting this evening. It continues on. It deals with the issue of COVID-19 and the Section 22 orders issued by the medical officer of health last week. And because Councillor Insina was not available this evening, I requested an opportunity to attend that meeting, which I did for the first hour and 20 minutes, and had an opportunity to ask questions of Dr. Hergy. There are a couple of resolutions on the agenda later on, which I would primarily support. So I don't see any harm in not going to that meeting as opposed to this meeting, and I have much more fun with our council meeting in any event. So that's the addendum for this evening. And there's an addendum with respect to the Council and Budget Committee, which will start immediately following this meeting. So are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Same ones as last night. My understanding from the clerk is that this is going to be carried over. I just wanted to make sure that, not last night, sorry, Monday. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that I have declared that conflict.
Yes,
That's
and I will
motions.
record them.
Motions A, B, C, and D. Is that correct? A to D?
Yes, all of them.
Thank you. Are there any other disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, then the first item on the agenda under motions is Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you. Oh, can you? Yeah, you can hear me. Thank you, Your Worship. This motion is already on the table from August 24th, but I will be withdrawing the SPCA, I believe it's the Animal Rights and Protection motion.
Okay. So then that takes us to the second motion. And again, that's you, Councillor Butler.
Yes, this one is with respect to the animal control bylaw, Your Worship, and just as the previous one, it was postponed from August 24th and still on the floor. With the agreement of my seconder, Councillor McDermott, we have made some friendly adjustments. So on the current motion, the first 3 paragraphs will remain. And then the 4th and the 5th whereas will be removed. Continue with the next whereas. And then we are adding 2 new whereas. And so I'd like to read those 2, if that's okay with you.
So Councillor Butler, before you do that, has Mr. Chidoba been in touch with you with respect to the availability of your, the experts that you've identified?
Yes, and I'm going to remove them as I read them.
Okay, so you've modified that paragraph.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
please proceed.
Thank you. So it will now read, whereas staff have identified a practicing lawyer in good standing with the Upper Canada Law Society with a special, sorry?
I'm sorry, I don't know where you are anymore.
No, this isn't new. These are 2 new additions. These are 2 new friendly amendments.
So before you continue on there, Councillor Butler,
Sure.
it's now called the Law Society of Ontario.
The Law Society of Ontario?
As opposed to the Upper Canada Law Society. And have they identified a lawyer now, or are they to identify a lawyer?
You know what? I think we should put to identify a lawyer because I think they were in contact with someone, but I think they're going to keep checking. If I'm not mistaken.
So whereas staff shall identify.
Staff shall identify. So whereas staff shall identify a practicing lawyer in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario with a specialization in animal rights and welfare law and an expert veterinarian or an expert in the practice of veterinary medicine who is in good standing with the Canadian Veterinary College. And whereas staff will be working with these two individuals in the development and review process for the animal welfare protection bylaw and animal control services. So those are the two additions. The first that will remain, and there is a second new that, and that is that council directs staff to provide a draft bylaw to council at the first council and committee meeting in January 2021.
Okay, so then what I would like you to do is read the entire revised motion for the
Okay.
benefit of members of council.
Sure. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas the town of Fort Erie currently has a bylaw, namely bylaw number 119-97 as amended, that regulates, restricts, and prohibits the keeping and running at large of dogs in the town of Fort Erie. And whereas bylaw number 119-97 is not reflective of other types of animals, and whereas there is a need to identify a variety of animals that are either domestic or wild to ensure provisions of care that include safe and humane handling along with clean, safe shelter. And whereas the current bylaw needs to be replaced and reflective of modern times, and whereas staff shall identify a practicing lawyer in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario with a specialization in animal rights and welfare law, and an expert of veterinary medicine who is in good standing with the Canadian Veterinary College. And whereas staff will be working with these two professionals in the development and review process for animal welfare protection bylaw and animal control services. Now therefore be it resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie directs staff to modernize and update the animal control bylaw to be reflective of all animal types, both domestic and wild, to ensure safe animal harbor, handling, and protection, and further that council directs staff to provide a draft bylaw to council at the first council and committee meeting in January 2021.
So just for clarification, the reference in the last paragraph of the preamble, where there's a reference to animal welfare protection bylaw, that should be removed, should it not? Since I think that relates to the motion that you've just withdrawn.
No, because this one is the animal welfare. This is animal welfare and animal control. This is one bylaw that they're combining together. The other one was in animal rights.
It was referred to in your previous motion as the animal rights and protection bylaw. Do we have, Madam Clerk, maybe you can help me. Was there a motion, the motion that was passed in August, did that relate to an animal protection bylaw?
We can change it to animal well, just take out protection and animal welfare and animal control services. That's-
The motion in August was for a new animal control contract.
Right. That was my understanding. So I don't think that there's an animal welfare or an animal protection bylaw that's going to be forthcoming, Councillor Butler. So I do think those words should be removed from that paragraph of the preamble.
So the animal control bylaw is not, you're saying that it shouldn't, it shouldn't have an animal welfare portion to it?
Well, no, you made reference to in the preamble, an animal welfare protection bylaw, but there's nothing that has directed staff nor has council directed staff to prepare an animal welfare protection bylaw, to my knowledge.
So then, well, animal welfare is part of this animal control bylaw. So do I bring up a new motion to just deal with animal welfare and protection?
Well, that would be up to you, but for the purposes of this particular motion, which speaks to the animal control bylaw, that's the title of the
Right.
thing on the agenda. This would be the animal control services issue. And so I think at one point you were contemplating an animal welfare protection bylaw and you were contemplating integrating the two of them together, but I don't think
Yes.
we're at that stage.
Okay. So, all right, so I'll remove the animal welfare protection portion of it and keep it as animal control services. And what I will do is give a notice of motion for the other. Is that fair?
That's up to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Great.
All right. Did you want to speak to this?
I did. I did want to speak to this because I have a nice little heartwarming story. I was walking my dog over the weekend and I was stopped by a resident, and he spoke about what an extraordinary opportunity it is for all of us to use our voice for the vulnerable and the marginalized and the underprivileged, and for those whose voices can't be heard, and to fight for what is right in the marketplace. And it was meaningful to me. It was a great discussion, and it was a reminder that being a member of council is a big responsibility, but it's also a huge gift. And our municipality is not without issues. And so we have all championed different causes in our lifetime. And it is true, it comes down to a fight against an injustice. And regardless of their species and despite some belief systems, animals were not created to be exploited, neglected, or abused. And they are a big part of our existence and deserve to be treated humanely, with respect, and with moral conscience. And as councillors, we know that we need to overhaul this bylaw, and that the changes that need to be made need to be reflective of the worth and value of animal lives. The animals deserve this, and society has moved in a direction that demands it, and there is no doubt that animals better humanity. So I hope that council uses their voice on behalf of all the animals who can't speak on their own behalf and support positive change that will make a difference. Your worship, I would ask that we have a recorded vote on this as well.
Yep, that's fine. With respect to the timing in the second paragraph, Mr. Cookett, I don't think Mr. Chidoba is available, is he, this evening?
I don't believe he is. The timing is going to be fairly tight for us to have it done by January 20th. I know Kira's had some conversation about the timing and having this prepared. Kira, I don't know if Ms. Stoltz, if you would like to jump in. I know you've thought about some timelines with Christmas and all. This would be extremely tight for staff to have this completed. So I'll let Kira jump in at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. It is a bit tight for us, especially given the fact that the lawyer we originally planned to hire has now had taken a leave. So we are searching for a new lawyer to review our bylaw. I have spoken with Ms. Butler, Councillor Butler, hoping that perhaps we can have that extended to the end of March to get a draft bylaw in place. I think that will give us some time, at least to, one, find a lawyer and prepare the draft.
When is the first council meeting in January? Is it January the 11th, Madam Clerk?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, Your Worship.
Councillor Butler, did you have any comment on that?
Yes, the director and I talked just slightly before this meeting took place, and she explained the situation. So I'm okay with a March draft. My only concern is that there will be back and forth on this draft and going to the timing of the RFP. So I'm wondering if the first draft can come in February and the final draft in March.
What is the schedule in February, Madam Clerk, in terms of the?
That would be
terms of the-
February 8th.
Well, why don't we, if you're agreeable, why don't we say February the 8th, Ms. Dolch, if there's difficulty in retaining and getting the information that would be required from either the lawyer or the veterinarian, then we'll have to, I would suggest that you let council know that, in particular, Councillor Butler be aware of that in the event there's a need to extend that time. But we could, is there a problem with saying February 8th for the time being?
That's fine, and I can advise if we have some difficulty. Like I said, we have reached out to some other lawyers, but right now we're just having issues with the budget allocated to us for that work is well exceeding with the other lawyers we've reached out to.
Maybe have to come back to let us know that as well then.
Yeah, once we get some indication.
So Councillor Butler, it then reads the first council and committee meeting in February 2021.
Yes.
Is that agreeable to you and your seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Noyes, Zanko, and Lubberts.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm just trying to clarify, at this point, we're just talking about B. We're not going into C and D.
We're just
Right.
dealing with B.
B.
That's correct.
So I have no problem with us getting outside help in regards to redoing our animal control bylaw. I have some concerns because I have not yet heard in all the submissions and all the emails that we have any identified need in regards to other animals outside the SPCA care, which I think this is alluding to. I haven't heard any complaints about paws. I haven't heard any complaints about Omafra, probably pronouncing that wrong, because this is really their job, if I'm not mistaken. So I need some clarification. Are we basically telling paws that we don't think they're doing their job, or Omafra that they're not doing their job? Because this is their job, if I'm not mistaken, right?
So just for clarification, Councillor Noyes, the current animal control services agreement makes reference to the control of all animals. So it references domestic and wild by definition because it says all animals. And the responsibility that they have with respect to this contract is to take those into custody under that contract. So I'm not sure the significance of of your question because it's already covered in the
Okay,
current.
so they're already
contract.
covered in this.
Correct.
Okay. I thought we were, okay. Okay.
Anything
Okay,
further?
well, I guess because when I'm reading the second whereas, Mayor Redekop, it says is not reflective of other types of animals. So what other animals are we going to be adding to the animal control?
Well, I'm not sure that part of the preamble is accurate because my reading of the current contract, now this makes reference to the bylaw, and the bylaw may be different than the contract.
Okay, well, that's where I'm, excuse me, Mayor Redekop, that's where I'm getting, what are we talking about when we're referring to other types of animals? That's not currently in the contract. I'd like some clarification of that.
Councillor Butler, maybe you could clarify that, please.
Thank you. Currently, the current bylaw is only with respect to the keeping and running at large of dogs. It does not refer to cats or feral cats. And most bylaws within municipalities are referring to those.
So just for clarification, further clarification, the actual contract does make reference to all animals, any
Yep.
animals, and I think explicitly refers to exotic animals as well. So there is a reference in the agreement,
Right.
current
So-
agreement.
So that is why it's really important for the animal lawyer to take a look at this and to see in our community what we're dealing with specifically and to include those as a reference. So for me to say it's only going to include dogs and cats is wrong. It could include rabbits. It could include other things that are docile pets in a home. So I don't know quite what the catch-all will be, but we'll uncover that as they progress and draft up the bylaw and take a look at those issues.
Councillor Noyes, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm still somewhat wondering how far-reaching when you have a clause like other types of animals and other animal species. I would have liked that to be a little bit more defined in what we're looking at. And I don't know, it doesn't sound like any, I don't want to be taking over or getting in the way of the agencies that it's their duty to do this now. And I mentioned PAWS and OMAFRA who basically are, animal welfare services. That's what PAWS is, Provincial Animal Welfare Services. But if I'm under the understanding then that it doesn't necessarily mean at this time that we're going to be including all animals and all species of animals, that will be determined at a later date. And when the bylaw comes to us, if it says, let's say, alpacas and horses and camels, being facetious here, that we can say, okay, no, we don't think we need to put these on our list. So we'll have a much more distinct list. Is that what this is? Not all animals, but we're going to have a defined list. I think that I see Councillor Butler shaking her head. Yes, that's going to be determined at a later date. It's not going to be all encompassing. And that was my concern.
So my understanding, and Councillor Butler can correct me if I'm wrong, this motion would call for the provision of a draft bylaw, which could include a specific reference to animals, which is not done currently in the contract. But there are other issues that we would also have to consider, such as licensing, how broad the definition of animals should be for purposes of the control, and then what the cost would be. So those are all things that, Councillor Butler, I presume that would still be subject of discussion and debate once we receive a draft bylaw.
Right. Mr. Chidova sent me, all of council, actually, the link to the Toronto bylaw that they have and how they framed it. And that's why that lawyer was of particular interest. And so if you take a look at that bylaw, I'm referencing that type of bylaw for ourselves, where there are exclusions to certain animals and inclusions of domesticated animals that we have not thought of. And cats was one of the primary examples in their bylaw.
Councillor Noyes.
It may be, thank you, Mayor Redekop, if someone can answer, since we already have a motion that's passed back in, I think you said August, about reviewing our animal control bylaw, why can't this be part of that? Why are we separating the two since we're reviewing the animal control bylaw anyway and updating it?
Yeah, Madam Clerk, that is a question that I had contemplated, and I did go back to take a look at the motion that was passed August the 24th. It seems to me that was to provide some information to council, and staff has now provided that information, but that was background information, I believe.
It was the very first substantive clause, the first that, if you will, that the municipal council of the town of Fort Erie directs staff to examine the current animal control services agreement in preparation of the 2022 open bid date so that changes can be made to include animal rights and protection, revamped animal control bylaw, reflective of better deliverables and more inspection rights to the town, etc. Direct staff to examine the SPCA's policies and procedures, so that was something different. But yes, it did include It did include a revamped animal control bylaw, from what I can see. Yep.
It was to provide us with background information. So I
Yeah.
guess my question now, arising on what you've just said, is the motion this evening necessary in view of the August 24th motion? I think it is, and I think the motion is in order.
Do I still have the floor?
Unless the clerk wants to make further comment. No, okay, you
No,
still have the floor. You still have the floor, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I do see there being an overlap. Maybe some parts of this are a little bit more distinct than what we had anticipated in August. I do see overlap on the two, because I can remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that I brought up about the bylaw enforcement officers that the town just kind of approves when the SPCA gives us the name, and I was, if I'm not mistaken, that I was told, well, since we're reviewing the animal control bylaw, that could be part of it. We'll make sure we look at that too. So I'm just kind of confused why we have these two parallel courses going. But if you think we need to going together, I'm hoping that there'll be some coordination between the two bylaws. I think in the end, we're going to have one.
There's one bylaw, and the August the 24th motion asks staff to examine the current animal control services agreement with a view to looking at certain things. We received a report from Mr. Chidoba with respect to that. This now is the motion that directs staff to modernize and update the animal control bylaw. And I think it's in order. So
That's
we're
fine.
gonna deal with this.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
Nope.
Councillor Zanko?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment and actual question through you to Ms. Dolch. I realize Mr. Chidoba is not available, but I just wanted to ask, it's my understanding that the city of Welland and the city of Niagara Falls has recently reviewed what we're reviewing right now and implemented some changes to bylaws, new bylaws. They actually did an amalgamation, from my understanding, with regard to animal control. But I just wanted to comment, if Mr. Chidoba didn't know that, that might be some information for him. And I just wondered if he did know that already and if he's reached out to those municipalities, because this might make some of the things a bit easier and a bit less time consuming as you go down this path, if this passes tonight.
Right, it's definitely something that Ms. Dolce can pass on to Mr. Chidoba.
Okay. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'm happy to see that we'll bring the animal control bylaw up to date. I know that a few months ago, I spoke with Mr. Cookett, and the SPCA had recognized that this needed to be done a while back. So it's good to see that we're going to do it. But the question I have is the source of funding, and maybe I can be corrected, but I was under the impression that when when bylaw A was introduced and brought forward back in August or whenever it was, that we were going to, we allocated $30,000 of this year's budget towards working with experts, a doctor of veterinary medicine, and I think a lawyer too. So if we're using the 30,000 now for this. I think we're gonna have to amend that so that we change it from the bylaw that was just withdrawn and bring it into what we're gonna be doing now. Because the first whereas or second whereas, when they said the staff was speaking with a lawyer and a doctor, and we're paying them. Now we're paying them for this motion, and I'm pretty sure we were supposed to be paying them for motion A. Can I get some clarification?
Yeah, Mr. Cookett, would you be able to respond to that?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think the 30,000 is going to be enough. We've got a preliminary estimate from a lawyer, and it was in exceedance of the 30,000. So we will need additional funds, but I believe our policy allows us to move or reallocate those monies without going back to council, because it is under the 50. Mr. Jansen may want to pipe in here, but I don't see there being an issue with reallocating that money.
Mr. Jansen, did you want to make any comment?
No, the CAO is correct. We have an ability to make changes within a previously approved budget up to 25,000. 50 is for reporting to council on a procurement matter, but in this case, we could expand it by up to 25.
Right. I think it would be helpful, though, if council were apprised from time to time as to what the expenses are relative to this. Councillor Lubberts, anything further?
Yeah, and then Mayor Redekop, thank you. Wild animals that, and we want to introduce some different animals and more animals. So I'll refer them to as wild animals. When we're putting this bylaw together, we need to make sure that we're also looking at what this is going to cost, additionally cost the taxpayer to enforce, because we're going to need to put that in next year's budget as well. Because wild animals, right now, all we're doing is we're paying for the dogs at large and our animal control bylaw. So now if you're going to include wildlife into that, then there's going to be, from what I understand, substantial increase in the cost of providing those services.
Councillor Lubberts, I think that's a good point, and I would have anticipated, and Ms. Dolch, perhaps you can comment on this, that if this motion is passed and a draft bylaw is presented after obtaining the advice of the professionals referred to, that the report accompanying that draft would at least make some reference to other things, such as costs that would be associated with any new tasks undertaken by whoever gets the contract, so that council at least has an understanding of what they're voting on. Is that what you would anticipate?
Yeah, we could put something generally together. Obviously, we wouldn't have the details. It would be an RFP process depending when we got to the new contract.
Well, let me just stop you right there.
We'll give you.
Just let me hold on a second, because
Sure.
The last time that Mr. Cookett had an opportunity to speak to this issue, he indicated that he would have preferred that it be a tender as opposed to an RFP. I don't know if you've changed your mind, Mr. Cookett, but I think we should make sure that we're clear on that.
No, it would be a tender process, and yeah, with the draft report, there would be some costs associated with that bylaw to implement it. So we will try to put some numbers together. I would have to think there'll be additional staffing required, bylaw officer, vehicle, and so on and so forth. But we haven't got into that great detail. But it will be part of the draft submission. We'll try to put some preliminary costing together, so you know what it's going to cost.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off, Ms. Dolch. but I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. It'll be a competitive process, but I believe that the CAO has indicated he would prefer a tender as opposed to an RFP. Did you have anything further that you wanted to comment? Ms. Dolch? Okay,
No, thanks.
okay. Councillor Lubberts, back to you.
No, that's all I have, Mayor Redekop.
Any other members of council? Okay, before I go back to Councillor Noyes, is there any councillor who hasn't spoken yet who wishes to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Noyes, back to you. Yeah, you're on mute still.
I must have hit it twice. I don't know whether this should be changed or it's a friendly amendment or whatever, but if you read the second last that, and if you read the whereas above that, the whereas says, and encompass other animal species, and the one below it says to be reflective of all animal types, both domestic and wild. So are we saying all animal types, or are we saying other animal types?
Okay, so just for clarification, that paragraph has been, that last preamble that shows up, okay, right, so that's still there.
It's still there.
And you've got, so I don't have, I have what I think is Councillor Butler's revision. And perhaps you could speak to that, Councillor Butler. What used to be your the final paragraph of your preamble, is that remain the same? Or did you modify that?
It was,
Councillor Butler?
Sorry, so you're talking about the last whereas?
On your original motion, yes. Is that the same or did you modify that?
The last whereas was, it stayed the same.
Okay, so then what I've.
Of the
yes.
previous one, correct.
Right, okay, so then what I've got is, so it does include the words and encompasses other animal species.
Right.
Okay, and so Councillor Noyes' comment to that was, Councillor Noyes again?
okay, was that that under, in the next paragraph, talks about the bylaw to be reflective of all animal types, both domestic and wild.
So
So,
other would be a friendly
So, yeah.
amendment.
That's what I'm thinking. You know,
I'm okay with putting other instead of all, for sure.
that's in the first substantive paragraph?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
that the other thing too, as we're moving forward, I do like Councillor Zanko's comment about Niagara Falls and Welland reviewing those. I think that would be a great place to start, because again, I'm a firm believer if the wheel's already invented, use it, and that may be a very good place for us to start to see what they've done, what they've included, and things like that, to see how much of that would apply to what we're trying to get. So I would really encourage that be a starting point to see what they've done. I think Councillor Zanko's
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to this before I call the vote? Okay, so what I'm going to do, Councillor Butler, just to make sure that everybody is fully aware of the changes that have been made, could you read the revised motion for the benefit of council, please?
The whole?
Yeah, please.
Sure. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that whereas the town of Fort Erie currently has a bylaw, namely bylaw number 119-97 as amended, that regulates, restricts, and prohibits the keeping and running at large of dogs in the town of Fort Erie. And whereas bylaw number 119-97 is not reflective of other types of animals, And whereas there is a need to identify a variety of animals that are either domestic or wild to ensure animal rights along with safe and humane handling and care are adhered to. And whereas the current bylaw needs to be amended and, sorry. Oh, okay. I know where I went wrong. Sorry. Needs to be replaced and reflective of modern. Sorry, Siri's talking to me. I don't know why. Sorry. Whereas the current bylaw needs to be replaced and reflective of modern times and encompass other animal species. Whereas staff shall identify a practicing lawyer in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario, with a specialization in animal rights and welfare law, and an expert of veterinary medicine who is in good standing with the Canadian Veterinary College. And whereas staff will be working with both professionals in the development and review process for animal control services. Now therefore be it resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie directs staff to modernize and update the animal control bylaw to be reflective of other animal types, both domestic and wild, to ensure safe animal harbor handling and protection. And further, that council directs staff to provide a draft bylaw to council at the first council and committee meeting in February with a final draft in March.
February 2021.
Yes, February 8th, 2021.
Okay, the part about with a final draft in March, that wasn't part of the original or the initially revised motion.
Okay, so take that out then.
Right, so it ends at February 2021. Is
Okay,
everybody
February.
clear? Are all councillors clear on that? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I just need some clarification from the clerk, maybe. Listening to the whereases when it's talking about the doctor and the lawyer, sounds to me like that's a directive, and that might need to be therefore and not a whereas. Your whereas is giving direction that staff is going to be working with these people, and I think it should be a directive rather than a whereas.
Yeah, you know what, Madam Clerk, I think I agree with that.
So do I, Your Worship.
So let's make that, so let's make those two whereases the first two resolutions under the substantive portion. So they would be moved down and they would be, instead of whereas, that staff.
Identify.
That staff shall identify, that staff will be working with.
Or work with.
Will work with, yes.
We'll engage.
Well, we'll work with.
Yeah.
Two. This becomes 3, there's 4. Got it.
Yeah, I think engage is appropriate. So I think Councillor Butler should say that staff will engage with both professionals in the development and review process, et cetera.
Okay.
So one would be number 1, one would be number 2, number 3, and number 4. Okay, so.
Can we read it out again, please?
Yes, I think we should read it again because we've agreed as a council that when we have amendments and we're changing things around, we would do that. So let's get this, make sure that everyone understands and where everything is going. So Councillor Butler, you'll be able to recite this by heart by the time we're done. So yes, from the beginning, please.
Okay, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas the town of Fort Erie currently has a bylaw, namely bylaw number 119-97 as amended, that regulates, restricts, and prohibits the keeping and running at large of dogs in the town of Fort Erie. And whereas bylaw number 119-97 is not reflective of other types of animals. And whereas there is a need to identify a variety of animals that are either domestic or wild to ensure animal rights along with safe and humane handling and care are adhered to. And whereas,
Excuse me, just hold on a second.
sorry,
That last paragraph that you just read,
Different.
is it
it's
different?
different. It is
Oh,
different. What I
yeah,
have,
it is.
what I've had is
Sorry,
that,
sorry.
yeah,
Whereas there is a need to identify a variety of animals that are either domestic or wild to ensure provisions of care that include safe and humane handling along with clean, safe shelter. And are we good with that? That's
Yep.
the right one, right?
that's correct.
And whereas the current bylaw needs to be replaced and reflective of modern times and encompass other species. Now, therefore,
Other animal species.
other animal species, yes. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff shall identify a practicing lawyer in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario with a specialization in animal rights and welfare law and an expert of veterinary medicine who is in good standing with the Canadian Veterinary College, and that staff will engage with both professionals in the development and review process for animal control services. Sorry, I forgot to say now therefore be it resolved. Is that a problem?
No, you already said that. You
Okay.
did say-
Okay, that the municipal council of the town of Fort Erie directs staff to modernize and update the animal control bylaw to be reflective of other animal types, both domestic and wild, to ensure safe animal harbor handling and protection. And further, that council directs staff to provide a draft bylaw to council at the first council and committee meeting in February 2021.
Okay, is everyone clear on that? Madam Clerk, a recorded vote has been requested.
Yes. Councillor Lubberts,
Yes.
Councillor McDermott,
Yes.
Councillor Butler,
Yes.
Councillor Zanko,
Yes.
Councillor, oh, not Dubanow, Councillor Noyes,
Yes,
Mayor Redekop.
Yes,
The vote carries, your worship.
thank you. That then takes us to the next motion, Councillor Butler, that you have on the agenda.
Yes, sorry, I have to look at which one is in order.
This would be the SPCA's policies and procedures.
Okay. So moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas the town of Fort Erie currently has a contract with the Fort Erie SPCA, and whereas the current contractual agreement with the Fort Erie SPCA sets out that they must demonstrate a health and safety program with objectives and standards in compliance with applicable legislation and municipal policy. And whereas that program is to be provided to the town with a health and safety policy and applicable safe work procedures. Now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to request a copy of all Fort Erie SPCA policies and procedures as it relates to its contractual obligation of health, safety, and procedural guidelines as it applies to employees, facilities, animal intake, impound services, adoption, end of life, dog licensing, and any and all other as implied. And further, that council requests the Fort Erie SPCA to provide the documents within 3 business days of the request from staff.
Councillor Butler, before you speak to this, the end of the first substantive paragraph, the
Yes.
words "as implied," I'm not sure what that means. Could you clarify that, please?
So adoption, end of life, dog licensing, any and all other as implied. It just means that any and all documents as implied with health and safety, that's part of that procedural binder.
Then I don't think it's implied means that it's, I think it would be better wording if you stated "and all other incidental policies."
Okay,
That would mean policies that are incidental to what you've already listed.
okay.
If your seconder is agreeable to that amendment?
I'm fine with that.
Yes. Okay, fine. Did you wish to speak to that, Councillor Butler?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I, on the 23rd of October, and I sent everybody an email just before council started, but on the 23rd of September, I did receive a package with respect to all of the policies for health and safety. And I was quite surprised that they weren't updated. They were outdated. They were 2010, and they were during past manager's term of employment. And then another package was dropped off to me on the 27th of October with the updated policies. And unfortunately, those updated policies were still reflective of the 2010 policies that were in place. And some were updated to say updated as of October of 2020, which in my mind states that if that's the first date of reference for update, there wasn't an update from 2010 and all those years in between. And some of those policies still were reflective of the past manager. So part of the reason why I have some concern is to ensure that we take a look at what those policies actually are that are in place. And that's why the 3 days, so that we can give guidance and say these aren't sufficient and these are really where the municipality needs to identify what policies should be in place with the Fort Erie SPCA.
Any councillor wishes to speak to this? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I think I understand the purpose behind this, but also taking in all the recent information that we've received from the SPCA that they are hiring outside consultants to do exactly what I think Councillor Butler is hoping for, that I'm not sure if we get the policies and procedures and all those things that we're asking for, knowing that they're all going to be revisited by the SPCA and updated. I'm not quite sure why, unless we don't have faith that the SPCA is going to do it. I would like them to hire their consultants, pay their consultants, do what they said that they were going to do, and then review. See, look at the updated ones, because I'm not sure what we are going to do with policies and procedures, which we know are going to be changing in many cases, I think fairly drastically, and be modernized. I'm not quite sure whether we want these now or whether we want them when they're fixed and substantial improvements done. I'm not sure what we're going to do with these documents. Are we going to give them to the lawyer and the veterinarian that we're hiring to do? I see Councillor Butler shaking her head. So I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with these. And I'd like to give the SPCA a chance to do what they said that they were going to do, because I'm looking at the people that they're planning on hiring as consultants. They're quite well known. One's from the University of Guelph and the human resource person that they work on this. So I don't know if I can support it now, because I don't think it's going to be information that's going to be useful to us.
Well, Councillor Butler, maybe you can respond to that.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think we need to establish a terms of reference to see what they've had in place currently, or what they have in place currently, and what they will have in place once they, proceed. And it's a good milestone for any organization to take a look at where they were, where they're going, and where they're going to be. So that's the whole purpose of this. And as I said, I did receive those 2 packages. I do have them, yeah. But maybe they've done something since October 27th that we're unaware of, and that could be the term of reference for our municipality to take a look at where they have been and where they will be when they submit their next health and safety policies.
Councillor Noyes, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, and I appreciate Councillor Butler's clarification. What somewhat, I wouldn't say confused, but unclear on that. If we have their policies and procedures as of October 27th, which is less than 3 weeks ago, asking for them again. The only thing is, like I said, if we're going to ask for them again, what I would like them to do then, the SPCA perhaps to highlight the areas of their policies and procedures that they're planning on updating and reviewing. And again, I don't see any point to looking at something that's going to be redundant, even before we look at it. Like, I think they've recognized the problem, so I'm not quite sure, since we have October 27th. I don't think we're going to gain anything.
Any other councillors wish to speak to Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I have a tendency to agree with Councillor Noyes, and I think maybe because of the fact that the SPCA has told us that they are engaging with consultants to bring their policies and procedures to update them and stuff, that maybe it would be better that we give them some time to do that. And maybe tonight we ask them to bring forward 3 months from now what they have and what they're working on, to give us an update. And then if there's any more that we would like to see, then we could request for more to be worked on, and at least to give them an opportunity to work with the consultants and put them together. But I think if we give them a timeline that we want to see some progress, then I think that would satisfy our staff and the rest of council.
Madam Clerk, when is the first council and committee meeting in February? Is that on the, what is the date of that?
That's February 8th, Your Worship.
February the 8th. So Councillor Butler, does it make any sense, since that's when we're going to be getting the draft bylaw, to have the SPCA provide us with their policies then, after they've had an opportunity to consult with the experts that they've indicated they've retained? Just asking the question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Like, I appreciate that they don't have health and safety policies in place, and they've recognized that, obviously, because they are hiring a consultant to put it in place. My ask was just to, at the time, ensure that they were going to move forward in the right direction. So I'm okay with waiting. It does take time to put these policies in place. It's not going to be done in a month or 2 or 3 months. It takes a year to actually complete all of the criteria that's necessary. So if we want to wait until February, I'm okay to wait.
Well, why don't we do that? Why don't we say, actually, why don't we say February the 5th, which is the Friday before, and then we can see what progress they've made. We can see if they've actually got some policies in place that do require some further work, and which ones they've got the plan to develop. Because if they've consulted experts in the field, they'll at least have a plan for how they're going to move forward to address these issues. So February 5th, is that agreeable date?
Sure.
Okay, so then that would say that council requests the SPCA to provide the documents by February the 5th. By February the 5th.
Okay.
To council.
By February 5th, 2021, to council and take out days of the request from staff, correct?
Yes. And that's, of course, subject to your seconder agreeing.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Lubberts, you had the floor.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And just to touch back on the fact that the SPCA has hired this consultant. When I spoke with Dr. King, he's also indicated that if there's anything specific that council would like to see in a policy or a procedure, right, he would like council to submit that to the SPCA because not only are we, is the SPCA rather, putting together some policies and procedures, but the firm that they hired, there's numerous policies and procedures that are available. And if council would like to see them get some over and above what is required, they're more than willing to get more than what's required by legislation or council. So, and SPCA is looking at that as well themselves. So if there's anything specific that council would like to see, then Dr. King would like to hear from us.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Lubberts?
No, that's fine.
Any other councillor wish to address this? If not, you didn't ask for a recorded vote, Councillor Butler?
Yeah, we read out what we're voting on. What's the new motion now?
Okay, so the only changes to the motion that you would have are the end of the first substantive paragraph. So instead of as implied, it would say incidental policies. And the last preamble, last substantive paragraph would say that council requests the SPCA to provide the documents by February 5th to council, February 5th, 21 to council.
If they don't, do we want them to provide everything that they're going to have, or do we want them to provide that they're working on them?
They will provide the documents.
This policies together, right?
Yeah, I would anticipate they'll provide the documents that they have relative to the policies, and if they don't have policies completed, they would at least provide an indication.
Okay, all right.
What the plan is. That way we would be informed as to where they are.
Okay.
And I think that would be what you're looking for, Councillor Butler. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the resolution, the motion? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the final motion on the agenda, Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott to terminate the contract regarding terminate the current contract with the Fort Erie SPCA and move up RFP timetable. Whereas the corporation of the town of Fort Erie entered into a contract with the Fort Erie SPCA on May 24th, 2019, which commenced June 1st, 2019, and whereas the contract was set to end on May 31st, 2022, and whereas a new contract is scheduled to be replaced on an open RFP bid system in 2022, and whereas the current contract allows the town to terminate the agreement without penalty or payment by way of a 90-day written notice with the intent to terminate, now therefore be it resolved that the municipal council of the town of Fort Erie directs staff to notify the Fort Erie SPCA by written notice of termination no later than December 31st, 2020, with an effective contract end date of March 31st, 2021. And further that council directs staff to place the updated contract on an open bid system with a successful bidder to commence on April 1st, 2021.
Just for clarification, Councillor Butler, I believe the reference to RFP in the third preamble should be removed.
Yes.
It's an open bid system and it doesn't have to be determined yet.
Okay. And also, Your Worship, because of the timelines that we discussed earlier, I'm going to ask Director Dolch to speak to those timelines again, because I think we're going to have to change those as a direct result.
Yes, Ms. Dolch, could you speak to the timing proposed in this motion?
Yes, thank you. Originally I talked with Councillor Butler. I did talk about a date of perhaps June 1st to get it on the open bid system. And that's what we discussed previously. So I'll leave it at that for now. I know the timing's been moved up from the other date. So I'll just leave it there for now.
So June 1st would be the date that would appear where? Instead
For the
of April
successful
1st?
bidder to commence.
Yeah.
Instead of April 1st, it would be June the 1st.
Yes,
So are you amending your motion?
yes. But then that would mean that we would, I don't know how that affects the notification, because we would have to ask the SPCA to continue to do the work until such time as a successful bidder takes over June 1st. And it could be them, but it could be somebody else as well. So does that mean then our 90 days notice gets moved?
You can give more than 90 days notice.
Oh, well then,
Can't give less than 90 days notice.
I see. Okay, well then, I mean, I didn't know that. That's why I went with a December 31st notice to give the 90 days. So we can continue with the December 31st notice and then have the contract end date effective May 31st.
Then instead of April 1st, it's June the 1st.
So May 31st in the first substantive, and then June 1st in the second substantive.
So your seconder is in agreement with that?
Yes, your worship.
Okay. So perhaps you could reread then the motion, please.
Sure. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas the corporation of the town of Fort Erie entered into a contract with the Fort Erie SPCA on May 24th, 2019, which commenced June 1st, 2019. And whereas that contract was set to end on May 31st, 2022, and whereas a new contract is scheduled to be placed on an open bid system in 2022, and whereas the current contract allows the town to terminate the agreement without penalty or payment by way of a 90-day written notice with the intent to terminate. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the municipal council of the town of Fort Erie directs staff to notify the Fort Erie SPCA by written notice of termination no later than December 31st, 2020, with an effective contract end date May 31st, 2021. And further, that council directs staff to place the updated contract on an open bid system with the successful bidder to commence June 1st, 2021.
Want to speak to that, Councillor Butler?
I do. Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I've said this many times that the municipality made mistakes with the current contract, and there's a disconnect of measurable deliverables and expectations. And I believe we failed by not doing our best to ensure that those expectations and the expectations of the general public translated to the safety and welfare of animals within our care. Terminating this contract moves us forward so that whoever takes over the contract has the systems in place that are beneficial to the animals and the environment that they inhabit. Deliverables that ensure continuous improvement, transparency, education for not only the contractor staff, but educating the public, guiding them to a higher level of understanding that compassion, understanding, dignity, and respect aren't just the right of individuals, but also of our animals. And we have an obligation to stand up as leaders. We need to be just as accountable as the contractors we engage to uphold moral and ethical care of the animals we entrust to them. And I hope that this council fights for the much needed change and votes in favor of terminating this contract so that we can get it right with the next one. And Your Worship, I would like to ask for a recorded vote for this one as well.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak to council with respect to this motion? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I don't think that I can support this. First of all, we have a contract that both parties signed in good faith. And to terminate the contract, I would think, from my point of view, that if you're going to terminate a contract, you need good reason to terminate the contract. And so far, I haven't seen any reasons why we should terminate the contract. We just passed a motion where we agreed that we're going to allow the SPCA some time to put their policies and procedures together. We're requesting that they provide us with that information, and all that becomes redundant if we're going to terminate their contract. And so why are we even asking for all the things that we're asking for if the contract is going to be terminated? and you might have a new contractor. So I would think that if you look at the last one of the clauses in the contract that we have, and it's with the 90-day notice, it also says any such amendment, right, shall be subject to negotiations between the party, right, and mutual agreement. So if there's things that need to be done, and we've recognized that things need to be done between the town and the SPCA, then we should be honoring the contract and negotiating with them so that they can put together their policies and procedures. And then when the contract comes up for renewal, then it will be based on the open bid system, and we'll have everything in place. And we won't be squeezed with timelines, because it seems to me that, you know, we're in budget negotiations right now, and our staff is going to be awful busy. And now we're going to have to negotiate an RFP or an open bid at a tender system. And we're going to have to be discussing with lawyers and doctors of veterinary medicine. And we're putting a lot of burden on our staff. And if you look at the timeline now, you're looking at extending it to June, and the contract ends in May of 2022. So you're 10, 11 months extra, and you're going to go through all that time and effort and trouble of putting all those things together and for 10 months. Doesn't make sense to me. I won't be supporting the motion.
Any other councillors? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I want to say this has been a real eye-opening experience for me as well. I feel that I did fail the municipality with the original contract and possibly just not really digging into it and seeing what should be in place. I am going to support this. There is things missing. We've all identified that there needs to be some improvements. Health and safety is, you know, one of them. But I think by supporting this, you know, it allows the SPCA to get all the things in place that we discover should be part of a contract. For one, in my opinion, there should be a vet tech on staff. And I'm pretty certain as when we go down this path, we're going to learn that, you know, having a vet tech on staff is really important. The other thing is, you know, hours of operation. I think that, you know, a 24/7 on-site staff member should be present. What if there's a fire, for example? What if an animal had surgery and in the middle of the night, they needed extra care? I do believe that as we go down this review path, we will discover that the contract should include that as well. So I am going to support this. I'm hopeful that by the time June 1st comes, that the SPCA will have all these measures in place and will be able to participate in this tender, and perhaps they will be awarded with this tender. But in the meantime, I think that it's my responsibility, knowing that I failed the municipality when we just revisited this. I think it's only fair to thoroughly review this and make sure that we have the necessary measures in place. So I will support this.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor McDermott and then Councillor Noyes.
Yes, Your Worship. I feel like any of the other councillors, I don't really feel that this should have been our fight at all. I think that the contractors that we use should be as proactive at solving complaint-driven issues, and shouldn't have ended up here to begin with. I think the first time that Dr. King came to council, he was more accusatory than his last meeting, where not all of it seems to be conciliatory. I believe there's a disconnect between management and the board. I always believe that management, wherever you have it, has to have some leadership. And there are some things that went on over there that I'm really not too happy about. But here are some of the things that I think are important here. Ms. Vale just got to us to state her case. And Ms. Bonner came out, and many emails. People can look at it as disgruntled employees or disgruntled volunteers or whatever they wish. But they all had stories that were not very flattering to the SPCA. And anybody that looked at the video provided tells me another story. Because you know what? It's humans that mess things up, whether that be counselors or administrators or people that run SPCAs. It's not the animals. The animals are the ones that are being punished. So I seen some of those pictures and I thought to myself, especially the one with the pile of kittens in a cage, and try to picture myself in there. I go around town all day long. I see people walking their dogs daily. They love their animals. We do too. And the people that have filed complaints have a right to their day. And whether we win this vote tonight or not, they should really have their day. They've been called all kinds of names. And I know there's been name calling on both sides, but I haven't done that. I want to see the animals get a fair shake there. And from what those pictures showed me, not always is it a perfect world. And but we're in full control of that. If we end the termination tonight, there's ample opportunity for the SPCA to get all of their policies in place and show us that we're going to see a new model, not one that's not reactive to the needs of the public who are complaining or counselors who happen to take a hit because we're interested in what our constituents think. So the only reason that Councillor Zanko and Councillor Marina Butler got involved in this to begin with is somebody has got to help them get to council. Somebody's got to have that message out. And are we really dealing with the message on, well, we're going to do this now, we're going to do that now, and we're going to get better here, and we're going to get better there? Because at the first site, we didn't have any problems. Then all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, and this motion, the bushes started to shake, and all kinds of things were happening. So my thought is, I'll be supporting this tonight because the animals got to have a voice, and the people that had complaints have got to think that this council is going to support their constituents. So whether it goes or whether it doesn't, it's not because we haven't tried our level best to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. First, I want to recognize the residents who came forward with their concerns regarding the 40 SPCA. The cases they brought forward are heart-wrenching. And because of this, the SPCA has and will be taking steps to improve their ability to care for the animals in their shelter, ensuring that all animals that they are responsible for will be provided with compassionate, humane, and required medical care. The SPCA, I understand, has now partnered with outside agencies and prominent individuals in the animal health care field to help them improve and move forward, improving the standards and the care that they're providing. I also doubt that without the town of Fort Erie contract for animal control, that the Fort Erie SPCA would be sustainable and we would lose our local SPCA. However, if after we're going through this process with our new bylaws and everything with the information from that the town gets from the vet and the lawyer that we're looking at, if they're not capable or willing to fulfill the terms of the new bylaw, I'm talking about the new bylaw that we're planning on developing, I would definitely reconsider my position. But at this point, I cannot support ending the contract.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, did you want to make any comment with respect to the timeframes here?
Yes, Your Worship. Just a couple things. So I was just reviewing the timelines, Ricard. We would want the bylaw, the new bylaw, in place prior to us going out with an RFP. So it's the way I see it is the first draft is February 8th and then a final draft of the bylaw in March. And then we would make that bylaw part of the RFP process. So it will make it tight because we do have to put out the RFP, then we have to give them time to bid, then we have to close it, we have to award it and so forth.
Mr. Cook, just before you go any further, I thought we'd established that you preferred a tender as opposed to an RFP.
Sorry, tender.
So, okay, so this contract would be part of a tender that would be part of the tender documents?
Yes, because I would think, depending on how we approach this, I don't think we have the internal staff to do enforcement. So we have two approaches. Do we give it to the SPCA or the new contractor, or we try to do it in-house? So that's a decision that's going to have to be made once we have the final bylaw established. And I think it probably would be cheaper to contract out that additional service, and it should be part of that RFP would be my approach. So the timelines are tight because you would want that as part of. Like I say, you have to put it out to the public, give them time to bid it. Then we have to do a report and bring that back to council and award it. So I'm just saying it's tight. It's not impossible, but it is tight timelines for us.
Just for further clarification, after I asked you about RFP, you said tender, but then you said RFP again. And was the RFP in relation to the animal control contract or some additional services that might be required?
It is for the additional services that may be required.
Which haven't been identified yet.
Which have not been identified at this point, no. But I'm sure there will be.
All right, so let's suppose that in March, there's a final draft bylaw that's approved by council. At that point, you're in a position to tender.
Correct.
All right. And you're saying that would be tight.
Yeah, just so that we can give them time to review the documents and submit their bid, their price. Like I say, it's not impossible, but it is tight timelines. So we have to make sure that we hit that March deadline. So if for whatever reason, the lawyer that we hire cannot meet that timeline, that's going to push this date out. But we will keep council informed of the process. So if we need to come back and say we need to change that date, but there's where it gets complicated because you want to give them notice and it has to be a minimum of 90 days.
But this already provides us with the timeline in terms of the notice and the termination date. So you've got that.
Correct.
We don't change that. Once this is passed, we don't change that.
Correct. But if you give them notice that they're done the end of May and you don't have your RFP out and awarded for the start date of June, then you have
tender or your RFP?
The RFP, sorry. Then you have no one to provide the service.
Sorry. Sorry to make this as complicated as it is. Councillor Butler, did you have your hand up?
I did, your worship. Thank you. And tender, we can't have to remember that word, right?
Yeah.
But listen, I'm in business and most private businesses work at a different speed than government. And my belief system, and no offense to anybody and no disrespect intended, if you can't get it done in 7 months, I'm shocked at that. And we should be able to accomplish this. This is not rocket science. And if it's dependent on the availability of a lawyer and a veterinarian that's an expert, it's my experience dealing with lawyers that they act as quickly as you need them to be. And you find the lawyer that can meet those deadlines. So I don't believe that this is not doable. And in fact, if it extends longer than 7 months, I would be extremely disappointed. I think I've been amenable to extend it as a direct result of the findings that were given to me today. I don't think that it would be problematic in the least. Those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And just a simple question. I hope I get a simple answer. During the bidding process, right? Are we going to be asking the parties that bid on it for all these policies and procedures that we're requesting from the SPCA?
Councillor Lubberts, I would presume that those policies would be referenced in the new animal control contract, draft contract. And so they would be a requirement for anyone that wishes to tender. They would have to be able to provide us with the town with assurance that they have those policies in place, and the town would be able to ask for them. I see Mr. Cookett shaking his head up and down.
Absolutely, that'll be a requirement of their submission.
So we put the SPCA in a timeline to give us an update on what they're doing with their policies and procedures. Is that going to be redundant? Because I mean, when the tender comes out, you're going to be providing with that information during the tender process. So the last motion that we just passed, does that become redundant if we terminate the contract?
Well, that ship has sailed with respect to the last motion, and that would be up to the SPCA to determine. I mean, it's up to them. It's up to them what they do. We've asked for the policies by a certain date. It's up to them whether they want to respond or not.
Yeah. All right.
Anyone else? Okay, so since everyone has spoken, I can't hand the chair to anyone, but I just want to at least shed some light on what's happening in my head with respect to this particular motion. And the connection between the SPCA and the town of Fort Erie is a contract. The contract is for animal control. And the shelter aspect comes into this because we have also requested that they have a pound that they operate for us in connection with the animal control aspect of their work. They have a pound, they have a shelter. We're not responsible for the shelter. We're not responsible for the humane aspect of what they do, other than as it relates to the contract that they have with us and their responsibility to impound animals during the period of time that we work with them on that animal control contract. They've been doing this for the town of Fort Erie for several decades, I believe. And up until recently, I don't believe that we've had complaints of the nature or number that we've had recently, which would indicate that who knows what the past was. Maybe nobody wanted to complain, but these complaints have been relatively recent and they may have been going on for a period of time. I don't know that. But what I do know is that over the period of time, they've provided the municipality with good service. And I don't believe any of the complaints that we received related to the animal control aspect of the SPCA's work, other than the part that would relate to the pound and how they treated the animals in the pound or in their shelter. So I'm concerned, as every other councillor is, about the complaints that were filed and the presentations that were made and the comments that were made by those involved in the video and the presentation to council. There are also people in this municipality that support the SPCA, and I'm confident that even if they support the SPCA, they don't support animals not being humanely and fairly treated. And my position certainly is that I don't condone animal cruelty, nor do I think any of us do. I'm not willing to necessarily put our staff on a position where they've got to move a lot of parts in order to address this issue, which it seems to me in the meeting that I had with Dr. King, Councillor Butler, you were with me. It seemed to me that they're trying now. It may be that their initial response to these complaints was that there's no problem, it's not us, it's them. I don't think that that's their attitude right now. I could be wrong, but it seems to me that They are moving in the direction that they should be moving in. They're putting in place policies that you should have. There are a number of issues that we have identified in our strategic plan that we have staff working on. There are COVID-related issues that the staff that would be working on this SPCA matter have responsibility for. We're in the middle, we're about to start our budget process. We're engaged in trying to get broadband connectivity for our residents. We're trying to deal with flooding issues, which become more and more significant as climate change intensifies. We've got affordable housing issues. We've got access to healthcare issues, and that's just to name a few. Those are all priorities. This is a priority. I agree that getting an animal control contract effectively operating is a priority. Where does it rest with the other priorities? I guess that's a determination for each councillor to consider. For whatever reason, I guess it wasn't an issue when we did our strategic plan. It wasn't an issue then, but certainly that doesn't mean we can't consider it to be an important strategic objective to ensure that the contracts that we enter into with contractors are in accordance with the law, and that the contractors we deal with are operating ethically, morally, and legally. And that's what I think we strive to do as a municipality, and we should strive to do that here. I don't think that terminating the contract right now necessarily puts us in a position where we have to be. And so those are the thoughts in my head. And Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to call the roll for the recorded vote, please.
Yes, your worship. Councillor Lubberts,
No.
Councillor McDermott,
In favor?
Councillor Butler,
Yes.
Councillor Zanko,
Yes.
Councillor Noyes,
No,
Mayor Redekop.
Redekop.
Mayor Redekop?
Said no.
Oh, can hear you. It's lost, your worship.
Okay. That takes us then to notices of motion, and Councillor Dubanow, you had mentioned that there was a motion you wanted to bring forward with respect to the aquifer.
No, it was, no, your worship, it was related to the Fort Erie Lions Club, the request for the archaeological. I do plan on bringing something up about the aquifer, just not quite yet.
That's okay. I was going to bring one forward that on that, but you go ahead with the Lions Club.
Yeah, it's notice of motion that the town of Fort Erie provide a grant to the Fort Erie Lions Club to pay for their stage 1 and stage 2 archaeological studies.
Okay, and that will be returnable December the,
I think it's
14th, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor McDermott, yes, you had a motion.
Yes, I have a notice of motion with regards to the MPCA and the Government of Ontario. That council states its opposition to the Government of Ontario to the enactment of Schedule 6 of Bill 229 amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act, and requests the government to withdraw the proposed amendments, and that will be returnable on December 14th.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Noyes?
thank you, Mayor Redekop. Notice of motion in regards to the identified need to create an additional egress into the Black Creek Douglastown area, that a road through the new subdivision, in brackets Baker and Black Creek Road, be considered as one of the possible options to be investigated.
And that's returnable December the 14th.
Yes.
Anyone else? Sorry, Councillor Butler, didn't see your hand.
It's okay. I have two notice of motions, your worship. One with respect to speed reduction in the downtown core of Ridgeway from 50 to 40. And my second one will be to deal with a new bylaw with respect to animal welfare.
And are those both returnable December the 14th?
Sure are.
I think the answer yes would be appropriate.
Same thing, semantics.
Any others?
An inquiry.
Madam Clerk, I'm going to give notice of motion with respect to town staff being requested to provide a report with respect to the official plan identifying the aquifer as source water for rural residents. And Councillor Dubanow, I may pass that off to you once I've got that sorted out, if you're agreeable.
I'd be very agreeable to that, Your Worship.
Okay. Are there any others? Councillor Noyes.
I have inquiries, but not notices of motion.
No
So we're
inquiry.
not, okay, we did that Monday night, so we're only on notices of motion right now, sorry. I think,
No, I don't
Let me
think we did.
let me check my, yeah, we're only on notices of motion. We did the inquiries before, but if you have inquiries, you can always address them to the appropriate staff,
Okay.
or you can raise them at the next meeting. It's a special council meeting and we're confined to the agenda. Council, so then that would take us to consideration of bylaws. And Councillor Noyes, you have the first resolution with respect to confirmatory bylaw 116.
I have that, Your Worship.
Okay, so, yeah. You have second and third reading, I think, on that. Sorry,
Yes,
third and final
third
reading.
and final.
So Noyes, you have first and second reading on the confirmatory bylaw? One 116.
No, I don't, but mine ends at 1/15/2020.
I have that from the other night, Monday night.
No. Councillor Noyes, I sent new resolutions this afternoon.
Oh. Okay, I don't have that. I didn't open it, so
So what I would suggest you do is, you said you've got 115,
yes.
so I
We don't
believe,
have 115.
No, it's already done. That was the last one on my last. I didn't, hang on one second, I can just pull it up. Find you. Okay, here, okay.
do you have it now?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Moved by myself and seconded by, I need a seconder,
Councillor
Councillor
Lubberts.
Lubberts, that bylaw number 116/2020 to confirm the action of council at its council and committee meetings held on November 2nd, 2020 and November 9th, 2020, and council meeting held on November 16th, 2020 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That, Councillor Zanko, third and final reading, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow. The bylaw number 116-2020 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Noyes, you should have 117. That's the
Yes, I
confirmatory
do.
bylaw.
I just pulled it out. Yes, moved by myself and seconded by, I need a seconder, Councillor Lubberts. That bylaw number 117/2020 to confirm the actions of council at its special meeting held on November 18th, 2020 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Lubberts, you have the next resolution.
Yeah, I'll need a seconder.
Councillor McDermott,
McDermott, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That bylaw number 117-2020 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Dubanow, resolution number 7.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that council adjourns at 7:40 PM to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on December 14th, 2020.
Any Questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And we're going to take a 5-minute recess before we start the budget meeting, so we'll come back at 7:45.
You have to stay for the budget?
Do I? Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm staying home Friday and I'm not.
All ready to go, JJ?
What's that?
All ready to go?
Good to go. So I'll do the presentation, George, and then we'll do questions and then the projects. And then the last thing on the agenda is then is the actual moving and approving of the recommendations in the report.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, we'll just wait for Councillor Butler and then we'll get into the budget meeting.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, I just didn't turn it
Okay.
on.
Okay, then I'll call, everybody's here. I'll call this Council and Budget Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship.
Thank you. There are no announcements. There is an addendum, just that this meeting is to commence immediately following the special council meeting, which just ended. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, then I'm going to hand the chair to the Chair of Corporate Services to continue on with the 2021 capital budget. Councillor McDermott.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. The presentation that Jonathan Jansen will give us, and after that we can ask questions. So I'll hand it over to Jonathan, and I'm sure this will be as riveting as he always is.
Thank you, Chair and Council. Just bear with me while I share my screen here. All right, can you all see my one slide there? Next slide.
We can, but part of it is obscured by the images of those participating in the meeting.
I think you can drag those around yourself to different parts of the screen.
We can. The question is, where should we drag it to? Go ahead.
Right. Or I think you can also minimize it or show fewer attendees on there as well.
Can I interrupt? If you go to view options at the top and you can put split screen, and then you can put them side by side.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, well, we'll start moving. So tonight's the first 2021 Council and Budget Committee meeting. So this is also our first attempt at presenting the budget information in our new video format. So if you do have any questions regarding that, do let me know. I hope you're otherwise all comfortable and good to go. This report is based on report CBC-01-2021, which is on the town's agenda for tonight. And the PowerPoint is also available on the town's website. You can find it by going to the government drop-down tab and then to budgets and finances, and then clicking on budget information. And there's a link for the 2021 capital budget presentation. I don't know that the word's riveting or, but if that's the right word, George, but hopefully everyone attending and participating appreciate the budget process is a really good opportunity to reflect on the needs and wants of our community and to advance council's strategic plans. and ultimately to be good stewards with all that's been entrusted to us, as we often note at our regular council meetings. So the goal for tonight is to walk through these 6 key sections in the agenda. And my hope is that we can do that in a way that gives enough detail and yet summarizes things and is easy to follow and understand. That's always a balancing act for treasurers for any budget. So do please take the time to ask any questions you have and to press it into any areas that you need more information about, both in the meeting and in follow-up in any way that you want. We, as staff, prepare and present the budgets, but these truly are your budgets. So let's dive in. Presentation agenda is for an overview of inputs and drivers. There's budget program highlights that we provide related to the costs and the financing sources. Number 3 is a discussion of the risks and opportunities. 4, we always give an overview of where we're at in the budget process for the year. So next steps, both for approval of the capital and the other budgets that will be remaining. And then we'll open up for questions after that for the presentation. And then following that, we will go through the individual capital project worksheets that are both in your the capital package that was sent to you, as well as highlighted on screen. We have a summary for each capital project to follow along. So yeah, the budget is truly a year-round process for town staff. Planning, developing, presenting, approving, monitoring, reporting on assets. As you know, just this last Monday, we did approve the capital variance report for the fall. That's something we do semi-annually, which was able to return a very good amount of funding back to our capital reserve. So the process is extensive and year-round with the way that we monitor and report on things. It must balance sustainability and affordability. So we're always mindful of that, particularly in a year like this when much has changed and a lot more uncertainty, and affordability is a paramount concern. The quote on the screen I've included before. It does contrast the funding pressures for municipal assets with a quote there from Municipal Infrastructure Network. Just an overview as well of our assets. So this is just updated from last year. We look at both historical cost with some of our analysis of assets, but also the budget is intended to be forward-looking. So we have historical cost values for our assets of 341 million. That's something that shows in the schedules to our annual financial statements, and it's broken down by type there. But then more importantly, when we're looking at the budget and forecasts, we know that we have an extensive set of assets where the core infrastructure assets alone are estimated to have a replacement value of over $1 billion. When you look at Council's strategic plan, you'll find many of the priorities and objectives, quite a number of them connect and integrate directly with the capital budget, right from priority 1, which is optimizing our health. We see a lot of that with our parks and open space projects. Number 2, priority for Council is maintaining and investing in sustainable infrastructure, which is the major theme of this capital budget and any of our capital budgets. That helps to build a strong, vibrant, and attractive community. And all the others, in fact, all touch in some way on capital, from attracting investment to advocacy of funding with other levels of government and managing growth. So a large key part of our budget. The next one listed here is the asset management plan itself. So this is the largest and most consolidated input to our capital budget. It integrates our master plans. It draws in condition assessment data that we have all into one plan. So one key note for this year is we're fortunate at the beginning of the year to welcome Michelle Moore as our asset management coordinator. She's been the one to take the reins of the asset management initiatives and bring them all together to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction and that we're coordinated corporately and making good decisions with all the information we have, minimizing the risk and cost, of course, and maximizing the service delivery related to our assets. So there's just a few notes there with that. It is something that's required. There's an Ontario regulation by the province that we are well on our way to meeting the requirements of that. It's been staged over a few years, so we're in a good place there with having approved in 2019 our asset management policy and strategy. As well, the long-term requirements over the asset life cycle, the asset management plan confirms some good news that we've discussed before, that the strides made by council to increase our annual contributions to capital have made a large impact in addressing our own infrastructure gap. To the extent that we minimized it to only a few areas, that we have very specific strategic plans in place to fill those gaps over the next couple of years. The asset management plan, it does also note and require a strategy for increasing those the existing capital contributions through keeping up with inflation. So knowing that each year our capital reserves need additional increases to keep pace with inflation. This year we're using the construction price statistic from Statistics Canada, which is a 1.8%, which would bring with it a $211,000 increase. The strategic increases I just mentioned to address the gap is for $119,000. That's both of which are the water and wastewater components that addresses. As well, we do annually, or we do have a reserve policy that includes funding targets for most of our capital as well as our operating areas. It's a key piece that we've noted we don't have any this year, but we do look to repurpose any maturing debt towards capital as part of addressing the gap. And as well, any new or growth assets, we do include funding for amortization to reflect the fact that as we're bringing on new assets, we need a plan to ultimately replace them as well. We have just listed a few, summarizing some of the recent master plans that are giving guidance to what we do. The bridge and culvert assessment, something we do biannually. The water and wastewater master plans have both been done in the last 2 to 3 years, a facility condition assessment. So we're constantly providing updates to our master plans to make sure that we're prioritizing and meeting the needs of those assets. The current DC study was approved back in March of 2019, and that guides all the programs for newer growth assets. I do note here as well, consultation with external partners and agencies where some of our assets do require coordination, whether that's with the region of Niagara or the Niagara Parks Commission in the past, or a library, community groups and developers, a whole list of community partners we would want to make sure that we're coordinating and consulting with. So that brings us to the numbers of the 2021 capital budget. In the package, there are 64 projects that are proposed, totaling $16.7 million. This is in table 1 of the report, as well as appendix 1 and 2. We always just note that all of these amounts include the non-rebatable portion of HST. The town, as a public sector rebater, is rebated all but 1.76% of the 13% HST. So keep in mind when, with any of our projects, really, when we have a cost of $100 that would attract 13% HST to come to $113, the cost to the town after rebates is $101.76. So in keeping with most years and reflecting our asset inventory, the largest portion here is the roads, bridges, and sidewalks part of the pie at 41%. All infrastructure, so when you combine that with storms and drains and water and wastewater, is 73% of the budget. So again, the largest share. And of that, 77% is from the levy and 23% is from the rates of the water and wastewater. And you can see all the other breakdowns there by department and asset type. So we do just break down as well the component of that 16.7 million that relates to existing assets versus growth assets. So in this case, 13.8 million this year, or 83%, is for replacement of our existing assets. You can see some of the larger projects there listed, such as Lindbergh for $2.3 million, our annual road resurfacing program, the bridge and culvert replacement program. Note with the EJ Freeland Center there, that's one of the larger projects with the flat roof replacement. That combined with one other project in the package represents $1.3 million this year. So that's an example of assets coming on board. That's an asset that the town was involved in purchasing earlier in 2020. So that brings with it new costs and requirements as well. So this is just a list of some of the larger growth assets for $2.9 million. And with some of these, it is just the component of a project that is growth related. So for example, the largest one here is the Albert Street Park renovation. That's not the total of that project. It's a little larger, but some of the components are replacement of existing assets. So you'll see here just the new components. So this graph shows the financing sources of the whole program, 77% of which is through our capital reserves. And when you hear municipal funding gaps and infrastructure gap or read articles on that, it generally does focus on the need for municipal reserves to be a stable and reliable source and carry most of the burden of a capital program. The other sources we note here are the development charges, based on the study I noted earlier. That's 16%. Federal gas tax, which we have received an annual payment at 6%, and some smaller amounts for 1% for other types of revenues and grants, which I'll comment on just briefly with it being zero at this point. So with the reserves, they represent just about $13 million or 77%. And the reserve levels, they're projected to open 2021 with approximately $23 million. That does include the capital variance closeout report I mentioned earlier that has been included in that number. The capital reserves receive an annual funding from the general levy budget and the water and wastewater budget as well, and those total approximately $12 million per year. And just to note that the capital budget requests rely only on the 2020 existing base annual contributions plus the inflation, not on any of the other proposed strategic allocations. So this graph shows it's looking back over the last 5-6 years, if you include the year coming up. So we've increased from an annual contribution of $8.8 million, if you look at the top line for the total of all those components, to just over $12 million. That was in 2020 and is being proposed for 2021. So again, we would just want to commend council for this progress, particularly with the levy core infrastructure assets. And those assets, when you look at the core and the non-core assets that are broken out on that graph, core are the ones that were reflected in the asset management plan. They're the roads, bridges, and storms, whereas the non-core assets, the non-infrastructure assets, are parks, fire, IT, facilities, things like that. So then looking forward, this graph shows the estimated reserve balances with our current contributions and the 10-year capital that's been forecasted this year for the 10 years following 2021. So you can see the projected trends for the two levy at the top being stronger than our water and wastewater, which has lower growth over the term. And while this is good news for our reserve balances, just some context is that the provincial benchmarks that we would look at for reserve balances, the town is actually just slightly under the average reserve balances for the province. So it's good to be in the middle of the pack there and to not be low. But while these are strong and helping us achieve our asset management goals, it is still slightly below the provincial average. Debt, we did approve new debt with the 2020 budget for the fire station amalgamation at 1.4 million. That'll be coming forward early in the new year for award and a review at that point as well of the funding needs. We're expecting that the debt will be used for a greater portion of that. But no debt is being forecast for 2021. So we just note the year-end debt balance for the town as a whole for the end of 2020 is $5.5 million. The principal payments that related to that in next year's levy budget are $824,000 and $164,000 for interest payments as well. And then here we can just see how the debt balances are forecasted to decrease over the 11-year term. So with our low reliance on debt, we are projecting that to go low. Debt certainly is a good mechanism and a good tool to be able to use. But our strategy has been to prioritize debt for new growth in assets. This approach reflects what we call generational equity, where it helps us align the costs of new assets with the users of those assets. Overall, our debt levels are 2% of our own source revenues. And you can see at the bottom of the slide there, I've just noted as at less than 5, but it's actually 2 currently and reducing. And the provincial limit, it's well below the provincial limit of 25%. Often municipalities will set some other internal constraints to reduce that debt, but our debt is quite low at this time. So then the other sources of funding that were noted in that pie chart are the gas tax funding of $973,000, which we're applying towards our bridge program. And the commitment from the federal government is to increase to I believe it's still $973,000 in 2022, and then about $1 million in 2023. We don't have any information beyond that. The 2021 budget uses $2.6 million in development charge revenues, or 16%. The budget you'll see in many of the capital worksheets, it does reference the DC study where applicable. That was approved in March of last year. And then other contributions of $160,000. These are $110,000 from benefiting landowners when we do our drain programs, as well as we do receive some revenues from sale of some initial water meters. And then the just to note too there with the grants, we do actively pursue grants, and this is an unusual year for us to not at this point be able to forecast some. No grant programs or no funding is reasonably assured that we haven't previously budgeted at this point. We've been fortunate the last number of years to receive the OSIF, or the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, formula-based funding of just over $1 million the last 2 years. I did write them, and they haven't been able to confirm whether or not that'll be extended next year. There is an upcoming COVID-19 resilience stream of the federal and provincial ICIP, or Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, that we'll pursue. And just to note too, with grants, we did of course receive an allocation through the Safe Restart Agreement from with the provincial announcement back in August, but that was for municipal operating costs only, and capital is not eligible for that funding. So this is the capital spending over the 10-year forecast period by department and asset type, if you can pick those out. But you can see the variation year to year, depending on the priorities or the timing of coordinated projects. There's a low in 2026 of about $9.7 million and a high in 2029 of 14 point, I believe it's 14.9 million. Nope, sorry, that's more than that. $18.7 million. The average is $14.9 million over that period. And so we do break it down, as you'll see in the recommendations to the report, preliminary approvals, which have existing reserve balances available and ready to fund these projects, so we can do it in advance of next year's operating budget. That totals 7.3 million, and that's in Appendix 1. And we would, if possible, bring that forward for bylaw approval at regular council on December 14th. And then the general, so all other capital for 9.367 million. That's in Appendix 2, and that would come forward following the operating budget in February or March if necessary. The capital budget risks include the operating impacts. Those have been noted throughout the capital worksheets. The totals this year are $103,000, which is approximately 0.4% of the levy. This is in Appendix 3 to the report. And it includes largely that's for the levy, but some smaller amounts as well for the water and wastewater budget. So just keep those in mind tonight as we're going through projects that they may have operating impacts. The largest portion of the 103,000 is just around 92,000 for amortization, which helps fund the future replacement of those new assets. It also includes some maintenance agreements and casual labor, things like that. The parkland and DCs, those are difficult to predict year to year. They rely on developer contributions through the cash in lieu of parkland program and the DCs. The federal gas tax, that's reviewed periodically, as I mentioned earlier, and the terms are approved by the federal government and they may be subject to change. The asset management plan and the underlying master plans, they showed, like I mentioned, some areas that are slightly underfunded that we're working to address. Some require some additional data, and the results of that, the data collection for the condition, may result in more or less funding challenges. The asset management plan, as the requirements from the province and as our own plan as a whole grows, it may require some software. It's likely to include, we know, some enhanced software, as well as have some human resource components to it as well. And then lastly, there with the risk, unusual, extraordinary events. Just recently was again another indication of the impact that weather events can have on our assets. Last October 31st of 2019, the town did make a claim for the MDRA program in Ontario related to some impacts to that. And of course, climate change is expected to have additional future impacts. Opportunities, grant funding from other levels. As I mentioned earlier, we haven't currently included any, but that is an area that aligns with council's strategic plan. We monitor and we coordinate these with our grants oversight team that meets quarterly. There is the new program I mentioned. And there again, I do reference the MDRA, which is the Municipal Disaster Relief Assistance Program that we made a claim for. So there's been no indication from the province on the timing of when we might, or to what extent they might approve elements of that claim. But there was extensive damage, and we are hopeful that we will receive funding related to that. We have a meeting actually this Friday with the province, so hopefully that's a continuation of their review of our status with that. Debt is an opportunity, as I noted. We have low debt and we have capacity. Going back even to the grant funding, a lot of programs, they require a municipal matching portion. So as there are grant programs that require us to fund them, we have capacity not only through our reserves, but with our debt for areas where that would apply as well. And then operating budget impacts. There are some projects that carry with them some efficiencies wherever possible, we will reduce our budget to take advantage of savings where there may be fewer repairs or newer technology that has lower cost. And just one last opportunity I might make note of here is that we view ourselves definitely as a important partner with our local economy. So maintaining a sizable, carefully funded capital program at this time does help to keep businesses and jobs active. So that's been kept in mind with this year's capital budget. It's something we've heard from the construction industry in the last number of months, noting the importance of municipal projects continuing. So the next steps are the December 14th bylaw for the preliminary and February 22nd for the remaining portion. We are scheduled to have our water and wastewater budget and our user fees report come forward on December 9th with a January 18th bylaw approval scheduled. Many of our user fees, the most in fact, have annual indexing applied to them. So a lot of those do go into effect every January 1st. And then finally, the general levy budget on February 3rd, together with the library's presentation and the February 10th meeting, if necessary, with bylaw approval, if all goes well, for February 22nd. So just to sum up, the budget proposes a total of $16.7 million in capital projects to maintain and grow the assets that serve our community. The 10-year forecast is our best estimate at this point of what we would expect and are projecting for the future, and that's an annual spend of $14.9 million. And just before I turn it back to the chair, I just want to pause and thank so many others that are involved with the capital program and preparation of this tonight, from my assistant Nanette to the fellow directors and senior leadership team, Tom, and the many staff that are part of this ongoing process throughout the year, as I noted earlier. So that's the end of the capital budget presentation. We'll break here for any questions before getting into reviewing the individual project worksheets. And then later on, we'll return as well to the report to look at the recommendations there. So I'll give the chair back to you, George.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm only getting half the council on my screen.
There's probably an arrow at one end or the other.
Okay, there we go. We're all here now. Okay, that's good. So are there any questions of Jonathan's presentation, or are we ready to move on? Councillor Noyes and Councillor Lubberts after that.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Just one question. I see that we're referring to development charges. At what point are we going to start calling them community benefits? Isn't the term changing? Or
Jonathan?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Noyes. Yeah, there is new legislation that we did pass, approve an award of tender for that back. I think it was early in 2020 to contract Hempson to do a study for us related to that. Those haven't come into effect yet. I can't recall off the top of my head what the start date for those new requirements are. But yeah, as we transition to that, definitely there'll be some changes with the structure of what our DCs are and what components are community benefit charges.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
yes, Councillor McDermott. Thank you, Mr. Jansen, for that explanation. I'm just wondering, is that going to affect our anticipated development charges, or we just don't know yet? Because I know that there's some changes in what we can charge for and what we can't.
Yeah, we really haven't gotten into the weeds of looking at what that will be like yet. I think the province's intent was to make it net neutral, from what I can recall. But yeah, we'll have to get back to you on that with the impacts.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Jonathan, just on slide 9, you said something, you showed that the grants were 0. Is that because we haven't applied for them or they're not reliable enough to put anything in there?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Lubberts. That's right. There are a number of projects that are available right now, such as I did mention a couple, the ICIP grant program for COVID resilience, our MDRA program, but our practice is to not budget for these until they're reasonably assured. Those are all competitive application processes. So until we know, then we don't budget for them. You'll see throughout the year as we bring forward tender awards for different capital projects that we will substitute funding if we have been successful with grants. But it is unusual, particularly on the unconditional or stable funding that we typically have received, such as the OSIF formula based, for us to not have any this year. But we are hopeful that as we move through the year that we will be able to take advantage of more of those. Another one that we also often amend for is the regional CSO, or the controlled sewer overflow program that we are actively applying for.
Anything further?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have in front of you how much we got last year for last year's budget? How much grant money we got?
Yeah, I can. So my slide from last year, there was 1.4. There would have 1.4 million. Sorry, there would have been some other changes and amendments throughout the year. I can get you that exact figure later on if you wish.
Yeah, no, I don't need the exact figure as long as we're close.
Yeah.
And that there, if we get the same or around there this year, that's all gets adjusted as we go along, right?
That's right.
Yep.
And slide 12, you said that we're a little below the provincial average. What would be required for us to at least get in the mix of it and be around provincial average?
Through Chair to Councillor Lubberts, I expect that we're moving every year closer and closer. We just need the other municipalities to slow down. But no, short of that, we have a solid plan in place with our annual inflationary increases, with increasing the strategic areas that we've identified. We have a number of good operating discretionary reserves in place too. So, I mean, it's not, we would want to just say that we realize it's not a one size fits all different. We're also having a very active and healthy annual capital program, whereas we would know some municipalities are underspending on their capital needs as well. So reserves in their case may be artificially high. So there's a number of factors that could play into that. But I think if we stick to our plan that we've identified and we've had good advice on through our asset management plan, that will continue to be on the right track.
So just out of curiosity, would it be better? Is it a little bit less risky to be below average? Is it better for us to be below than above?
Jonathan?
Through Chair, reserves give greater flexibility, right? So it is better to have more flexibility. We also want to do the prudent thing and not be unnecessarily overtaxing and building reserves where we think we can manage with less in the shorter or medium term. So it's a difficult question to answer, but to be in a good reserve position is very important to the municipalities.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Nothing further?
No, thanks.
Your worship?
Chair, just to follow up on that, slide 14 deals with the debt, and you've indicated that we have about 2%, I think, of the operating budget or something of that nature. How does that compare with other municipalities in Ontario, or is there something that provides that type of comparison?
Jonathan?
Chair to Mayor Redekop. What are the financial indicators that all municipalities receive annually? The government province selects 7 or 8 to focus on for comparison. And the one that we've highlighted a number of times, I think as well in our levy budget presentation, is the debt to reserve ratio. That is actually in the capital report, I think. So the average in Niagara is $1 of debt for every $1 of reserves. So we are fortunate to be below that. We're approximately at 30 cents of debt for every $1 in reserves, and some would be much higher. Of course, any municipality that's in an era of new assets or growth assets, you see a lot of that from time to time, where there are new facilities, new larger projects that they would apply debt to. Then you will see from time to time that spike with some areas, but we're well below our comparators on average in Niagara.
And I suppose part of the calculation to determine the financial health of a municipality would also be the value of your assets. And the other factor I can think of is where you stand in terms of your asset management plan and the infrastructure gap that's been identified. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. It's one thing to look at a point in time at your reserve balances, which is what that provincial average was I was referring to earlier, but it's another to have annually the resources you need to carry your program. We annually are contributing $12 million towards capital. So not only is our point in time reserve balances near the provincial average, but our annual contribution is good as well.
Thank you. And if I might, Chair, the slide 16 deals with the average annual capital program from 2021 to 2031. And you quite correctly pointed out that 2025, 26, and 27 are significantly lower than most of the other years. And I'm presuming that staff has identified the long-term, what type of capital investments are going to be needed. But surely if we've got infrastructure, particularly our roads that needs upgrading, why would it be so low during those 3 years, 1 year in which it's less than $10 million compared to what we think is our need?
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think we found historically that as we've gone through this process, there is a lot more variation as we project out the 10 years. And then that tends to even out and stabilize a bit in the shorter term. So like in the 2, 3, 4 years, as there's more known information. Again, there's just a number of factors that would go into that. And, that we can give you more information to break that down, but it's a forecast. So budget is always evolving and always changing. So I think it's just the nature of some variation there. But yeah, we would want to seek it to be as stable and as possible over the longer term.
And finally, Chair, if I might, slide 19, you made reference to the various areas where grant funding might be available. And do we have any shovel-ready projects that would facilitate applications for funding if new programs came on board?
Jonathan?
Well, I know more specifically with the ICIP COVID resilience program we've talked about, the eligibility is heavy on the parks and trails component. So we've looked at a number of projects and applying that to those. even to the extent that there may be components of our fire halls is identified as a COVID resilience opportunity. So that's something our fire chief will be looking at as well, and possibly applying to that. But with the larger infrastructure programs, or I would want to refer that to Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Walsh, you care to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The last number of years, we've been trying to design projects a year or two before construction for a number of reasons. But one of those reasons is that if a grant opportunity becomes available, we do have shovel-ready projects that are we can present to the government levels.
All right, thank you. So I note that in the list of projects, some of them are design projects this year, which means that they will be shovel-ready once the design is completed and all the approvals are in place. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that.
Okay, before we get to the lightning round, anybody have any questions? Okay, so we'll move forward with your binders, and we'll start out with EOC technology setup and backup system.
So just one moment, if I may, Councillor McDermott. I will share my screen again.
And when you're sharing your screen, you take these guys out. It's going to make it very difficult for me to see people with their hands up. So somebody's going to have to yo or do something like that. Oh, Carol?
We need the report moved to the floor.
So I'll move the report, Chair. Chair, I'll move report CBC 01-2021.
Okay, thank you. Do I need a seconder?
Not in committee.
Okay, we're good to go. Is this the way it's always going to come up, Jonathan?
Yeah, unless you would, is your concern with seeing the others? Is that the issue?
I got an arrow that I can go back and forth. So I guess if you got a question, I'll go back and forth. It's just going to take.
Councillor McDermott, are you on a PC or are you on the tablet?
I'm on a PC.
Upper right-hand corner of the screen, you should see a button that says View with some dots to the left of it.
Yeah.
Click on that, and then go to Side-by-Side Gallery.
Oh, that a boy. Thank you. You're awesome, Nick.
I tried.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll start out with the technology setup and backup system. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move to the EOC technology setup and backup system. Anybody? Move to
We're on project 2 at this point, FIMM 21.
right.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, moving on. Fuller inserter mail machine.
Nope. Okay.
Comments or questions? The next one is IMI 621 IT computer hardware. Thank you. Moving on to IM 1S21 IT computer hardware. Comments? Moving along. PHON 21 phone replacement. Moving on to phone number 221 phone replacement. Moving on to RMT21 corporate remote access infrastructure. Moving on to RMTE21 corporate remote access infrastructure.
Councillor McDermott, if I may, I'm not sure what you're looking at, but you're repeating each one twice, I think.
Oh, maybe you have them on. Oh, I got you. Okay, thank you.
All right.
It looks like Serve 21 server and core infrastructure replacement. The next one is Albert Street Park renovation. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I just wanted to comment that it's a lot of money for a very small park. That's not going to have any bathroom facilities and no water amenities. I did have a chance to talk with Ms. Hanson about this, and again, a lot of this is into the consultant. 100,000 is to the consultant, and she explained to me why that's necessary. And again, this is going to be hopefully one of those shovel-ready designs that may be successful in some grant application, but I still think that's a lot of money for a small park. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else on that? We'll
Councillor
move on
McDermott?
to-
I do. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
I'm
Mr. Chair.
Happen.
Thank you. I think it's an awful lot of money as well, considering the fact that we have a lot of the developers pitching in for park funding. So I'm just, I probably will go ahead and support this, but I don't think that I'd be supporting any other parks going forward.
Thank you. Is there any more on this one now?
Yeah, Councillor McDermott, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Yeah, just a quick comment about this. This has been something that's been in the works for quite a bit of time. I've spoke with many residents in the area about it, and they're very much looking forward to this. The condition of the playground equipment in that park in particular has certainly seen better days. When I lived in that neighborhood, when William, my first child, was born, we often would go to the park, be disappointed in the condition of it, and then turn around and go the other way to the one on Barron Road. So I'm enthusiastically supportive of this. I understand it's a lot of money, but one of the things that we do in this municipality is ensure that we have good open spaces. It allows for recreational activity, it promotes health and wellness. And there is also a significant development charge component to this as well, which is, growth pays for growth, and that growth is benefiting the community. So I am supportive of this, and I think the residents in that neighborhood are very appreciative that council will be moving forward with this project. Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott.
Mayor Redekop.
Councillor McDermott, I not only lived in this neighborhood, I grew up in this neighborhood, and believe me, back in the last century, there wasn't much of a park there at all. But this will be the only, and is the only park really that has playground facilities. I think the next one is the one Energy Field or Energy Park that Councillor Dubanow referred to over on Barron. The next one would be something in Crescent Park, probably Ferndale Park, I think, so that this is an area that doesn't really have that type of amenity, and it is a lot of money. I agree. We did review this project last year and or earlier this year. I think it was last year, and there was a lot of excitement with respect to it. So it is a lot of money, but it's certainly something that's needed in that neighborhood, and hopefully we can get an explanation from staff as to why they expect it would be this expensive.
Councillor Noyes? You have to unmute.
And I'm not denying that there should be a really nice park here. I can remember that the discussion that we did have was that that we asked, well, can there not be a water feature in there, like a splash pad or something? That was one of the comments from some members of council. And I know staff looked into it, and I know that I guess that's not possible. And I'm kind of comparing it to Stevensville Park. It's getting a new playground and new equipment. It's going to be lovely. And I think the cost for that's going to be around, and some trails and things like that. And the cost is nowhere near this. So I'm just surprised at the cost. And again, I do think the residents deserve a really nice park. I'm just blown away by the cost.
Pygmy, would you like to check in on this?
Pardon me? Sorry?
Would you like to chime in on this?
Sure, of course. Through your Councillor McDermott, there are, it is, even though it's a small site, it is a complex park. There are a number of features within this park. When we went through the public consultation process for this park, there was a strong demand for both active recreation facilities as well as passive. So in developing the master plan, the consultant attempted to meet the needs of all the community by providing active play areas, multi-use courts, which were replacing what was there already, as well as a more functional playground, a pavilion with a gathering space for the community that would also provide shade for parents who are watching their kids on the playground or whatnot. We certainly will look for cost savings as we go through this, sort of the detailed design of this and pull together the construction drawings for this park. But the consultant had priced it based on current standards and tendering prices that we were seeing. So we certainly will look for cost savings, and we'll look for materials that are perhaps more efficient in price than others. We will know through the tendering process, I guess, what the market price will be at that time. Our goal will be to put this out for tender earlier in the year so we can try to take advantage of better pricing as well.
Thank you. Does this explanation suit everybody for the time being? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the Coal Docks Park Master Plan. Comments? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Hanson about this too, and with the recent windstorm and things, and the breakdown of the break wall in the not too distant past, is that I wanted to make sure that before we put anything on this property, that we would make sure that it was be sustainable. I understand that the Niagara Parks is going ahead with replacing the break wall, and I would hope that we would wait a little while to make sure that break wall is not going to disappear after a windstorm before we put anything. I think it's important to develop it, but I'm also concerned about putting, with the windstorms we've been having and the damage that's being created, that we have to be really kind of diligent what we can put there.
I don't think I have to worry about that, but I'll hand it over to Mayor Redekop. He can further explain.
Yeah, there's a ways to go with respect to this. This is one of the projects where the design, this is money that would be allocated to design. So theoretically, it would put us in a position where we'd at least have a project that we could proceed with if there was upper level government funding that might be available. The shore wall that's going to be replaced is really not comparable to what's down by the Peace Bridge or the south end of Fort Erie or the old fort. This is going to be primarily a wall that will be much sturdier and will be mostly backed by soil and fill. So the one that's there now has been there for probably 100 years. And if it hadn't been sitting on wooden structure, I think it would probably have stood up longer. So your comments are quite well taken, Councillor Noyes. We don't want to be putting money into something that we can't be assured will be there. There's some other issues that need to be dealt with, including working with the Niagara Parks Commission. And so really this money here is for design work. There wouldn't be any construction until there's something further down the road, maybe next year or the year after.
Anybody else on this? Okay. Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just wanted to pipe in here and say this is one project that I do support wholeheartedly. It's needed for the downtown core and especially in Ward 1. And so I whatever it takes is good. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments on that? Okay, then we'll move on to neighborhood park enhancements. Nobody? Okay, then we'll move on to Ridgeway Lions Field Playground replacement. Nobody?
Chair, if I could,
Go ahead.
I can hardly believe, I think this says it was erected in 2006. I can hardly believe it was that long ago because I remember when the project was involved where there was some money that we received from somebody or something of that nature, because I can remember being there helping put something together, and hopefully it's still standing, but yeah, that's a long time.
Anything else?
No, that's enough.
Okay, then we'll move on to waterfront land acquisition. Councillor Lubberts.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I see it's $100,000 and it's coming out of reserves, right? And I know that this year's revenue for Bay Beach is probably going to be pretty small. But last year, we generated somewhere around $500,000 in revenue. And that property, when we purchased that property, we purchased it with lottery monies. And there was always talk about return on investment and stuff. And I'm just wondering, because that whole project at the beginning, I think Mayor Redekop was the mayor at the time, that was all about recovering land, severing off the beach, and then selling portions of the property and stuff so that we could acquire more waterfront property. And I'm just wondering if we could, have some discussion with staff and maybe council get involved as well, and use a portion of the monies that we receive from Bay Beach and like a percentage wise, and put that towards waterfront acquisition as well. Because looking at prices along the waterfront, you're talking $1 million, $1.5 million sometimes to purchase a piece of property. And we're going to be here for a long time trying to build up that reserve.
Kira, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. I do agree in terms of the waterfront acquisition. It is an important initiative to ensure we secure waterfront properties for the long term for the public. In terms of what we have currently, money does go into the fund from the land sales account, but funding from the proceeds of Bay Beach, obviously a percentage could be considered, but I would direct some comments towards Mr. Walsh, because I do know the funding, that may be funding he relies on for other things.
Thank you. Kelly. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thanks. I really have no comment on it other than we do have quite a bit of money in the major capital expenditure reserve, and if we need it, we'll certainly ask council to release those funds.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts?
No, that's fine. I just some food for thought.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McDermott?
Yes.
Just a further note, we do include all of our reserve forecasts in the package as well. And I can note with that reserve, we did contribute at least a couple times through annual surplus allocations to the reserve. And like Director Dolch noted, we have contributed from land sales. So there is just over $2 million in that reserve. So we do have a good starting point for some of those priorities.
So when these monies are put into that reserve for that, are councillors normally notified, or is it just put in?
No, it would be through our annual, the two surplus allocations were through our annual surplus report or our annual financial report with our surplus allocation. So all of those would be going to council for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on that matter? Okay.
Mr.
Is that
Chair?
Nick?
Yeah.
Nick, yeah, go ahead.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment, and I think I've mentioned this previous years when this has come up. I've been a big supporter of creating this land bank to be able to do waterfront acquisition. Certainly we've had some land committee minutes over the last few months that have mentioned some strategic opportunities, and by putting a little bit of money aside, doesn't necessarily mean that the land bank or the land acquisition fund here would necessarily cover the entire cost, but if there is a strategic opportunity, it can help deaden that blow should it come up. So I've always been supportive of this. It was something I was really excited about when I was a member of the waterfront strategy focus group, and I'm always happy to see, we obviously can't pour a lot of money into it. We have other expenses, but whenever we can, just squirrel a little bit of money aside, and I think it'll pay dividends in the long run. So I just wanted to mention that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. We'll move on to waterfront property line markers. Anybody? Okay, we'll move on to bunker gear replacement. All's good there? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, I just want to ask the questions. We are still partnering up with other municipalities when we're purchasing this bunker gear.
Chief?
That is correct. We are partnered with others, and this current agreement ends March of next year. But there's already discussions happening between fire departments and purchasing departments of various municipalities on common acquisition. So the answer is yes.
And are we tracking the savings that we're realizing when we partner up with the other municipalities?
I'm not sure how we would, so far I could say that the answer would be no, because we look at, we get a quote based on volume and number. They don't give us a number, as we don't look for a number based on what if we would have bought it individually by municipality. But I'd have to get a budgetary number to try to track a difference.
Oh, so they don't give you like 10 units so much, 20 units so much, 50 so much? No?
No.
Okay, they just give you a quote on.
Right.
All right, okay.
For all of the municipalities as a total.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to Station Stream 5 hose and nozzles replacement. Now we'll go over to the boat motor replacement for Station 6. Portable radios replacement. The NFPA test equipment.
Councillor Dubanow had a question on the prior.
Okay, we'll go
No,
back.
it's fine, Chief. I'm good with it. I just had a thought, but I'm good moving on.
If I miss you, just give me a shout out, okay? I mean, I don't want to miss you.
I would have, don't worry.
Okay, so this is the NFPA test equipment. Okay, moving on. To more NFPA test equipment. And the fire training tower refurbishment. Anybody want to chat about that?
Chair, I was just hoping, sorry.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, do we still rent this out to other municipalities for their training? I know we did that in the past. I'm not sure if that's continuing. That's a great idea.
Chief?
Yes, and we've firmed up some of our pricing and cost recovery portions in the fee schedule bylaw. But yes, it gets used by various municipalities and some private entities also.
Thank you.
Mayor Redekop, did you have a comment on that?
That was my question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then we move on to the Arthur Street upgrade.
Oh,
Your worship?
I have a question on this. This calls for the upgrade of the road from Garrison to Louisa. So I'm wondering if we could just get an explanation on that, because a couple of meetings ago, we approved a resolution that only took the reconstruction to the street that enters into the phase 2 of the Peace Bridge development.
Okay, Kelly Walsh?
So that resolution, if I recall correctly, through you, Mr. Chair, was just for the underground infrastructure at the southern portion that was fronting the immediate development. This is for the design of the rest of the road and reconstruction in there as well.
Your worship?
I'm wondering if Ms. Dolch can clarify this, because she was involved in the discussion that I was involved in.
Okay. Ms. Dodge?
Thank you, through to his worship. Yes, and the money that's being put aside for this project will eventually be used. Only a portion will be used at this point, because it does end at phase 2. And then in the future, though, and it may be in the near future, the remainder would be used if the development to the south precedes another development.
So can I just recap in my mind what I just heard, Chair? So basically, we're going to be budgeting the whole project, but not all of the project is going to be completed this year. Is that what
That's correct.
So the other question that I have, Chair, arising out of that, since we're going to only be tendering part of this contract, is it going to cost us more because we're going to have to tender the other part at some point in time in the future?
Ms. Dodge?
It is possible, I believe, and perhaps Mr. Walsh can pipe in terms of when they estimate the work, there is some consideration in terms of costing, increased cost as you go along. They do build a contingency in there as well, but I'll defer to him on that.
Mr. Walsh?
A question for the mayor on that. When he says in the future, how far in the future? Certainly construction inflation is greater than the general inflation rate.
Yeah, okay. So I wasn't getting that far into the weeds. I was just wondering that if this project was being done all at once, we've got a budget amount. This is going to be done in 2 phases, and so there may be some financial impacts on this budget, I'm thinking.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Really, the difference in phases is, or scope is minimal. If there was a substantial difference by splitting it into 2 phases, we would certainly look at adding this section to the developer scope.
Right. And as I understand it, the part that isn't going to be necessarily constructed now is somehow going to be tied in with the construction or reconstruction of Louisa Street to the east of where that red line is, over towards the existing development. Is my understanding correct on that, Mr. Walsh or Ms. Dolch?
Kira, you want to grab that one?
Sorry, I apologize. I just froze, so I missed the question.
Your worship?
You weren't listening to me, which is fine.
No.
That's the story of my life. No, what my question was that I believe that the southerly portion of Arthur Street, which isn't going to be done now, but will be done in the future, that's somewhat tied into the construction of Louisa Street east of where that red line is right now, over towards the existing development. Is that right?
Through you to his worship, that's correct. That's correct. It is tied to that development on the east side of Louisa.
Okay. And regardless, the resolution we passed the other night provided for the rough pavement of Arthur south of the point where the underground services are going to be installed. Is that correct?
That portion, the developer is just contributing on his own. He's going to do that rough paving work just in the interim.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Okay, then we'll move on to Bowen Road water main replacement. We'll move on then to the Burbank Terrace water main replacement. The Lindbergh Drive water main and sanitary sewer replacement. The Nye Road upgrade. Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. Yeah, the Nye Road upgrade. Your worship.
So Chair, perhaps somebody on staff can remind me of the discussion that we had about this project, which is $1.6 million being driven by a development that we don't know when it's going to start. And we discussed this, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, maybe. And I'm wondering if someone can remind me. I thought we had decided not to proceed with this at this time, or was that simply referred to budget? The discussion as to whether we should proceed with this year or not.
Who wants to handle this one? Ms. Stolt?
Thank you. My understanding from the developer is it is moving forward. They're looking for a commitment. They want to move forward, but given the cost of the Nye Road upgrade, they wanted some assurances that the funding would be in place prior to them front-ending the cost.
And if I might, Chair, this is a development, my recollection is 19 lots.
No, 30 lots. You're thinking of the 19 lots on Nye Road in the rural residential area.
So which 30 lots are you referring to?
This is the 30 lots on Nye Road between Gorman Ridge. It was a while back, it was draft plan approved. It's 30 lots in a bit of a loop system,
Right.
Single detached lots. We went through the process quite some time ago, but they are looking, the development has sold to a different developer. They are looking to proceed, and they were just waiting to have some assurances that the work would be funded in a relatively reasonable time frame, given the high price tag.
Right, and half of this project then is being paid for by development charges. It looks like.
Ms. Stolt?
That's correct.
All right.
Councillor Noyes? Oh,
Are there any other strategic reasons why this road needs to be rebuilt now?
Through you to his worship. In terms of the strategic redevelopment of this, I will defer back to Mr. Walsh, but there is some alignment issues or curve issues on this roadway. And I'll defer if he has any further comments on the alignment issues there.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a study out there that says the alignment is slightly deficient, so we're looking to the developer's design engineer to address those issues. But it is development driven primarily.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. My recall of this, and I was concerned when it came before council, and I'm still concerned, it was a 2026. That was when it was supposed to be done, and it was moved up from 2026 to 2021. And I understood it had something to do about that the developer had to put in some type of an outlet and et cetera, et cetera. But the town will never recoup the money that we're putting into it through development charges. I think 50% is going to have to come from other sources. I think it's a lot of money. Again, I'm hoping that if we do put in, when we do this road, that the development is actually going to take place for those 30 lots. But again, this is driven by a court decision to do with an outlet. So, and that's how everything kind of moved forward. So, still not terribly clear why we're doing it when we're doing it. That's it.
Anything else? Moving on to outroad upgrade. Tracks to West Main Street. Anybody? Outroad water main replacement. Wildwood Avenue drainage improvements. Maintenance work order management system. Berger Road repairs. Councillor Noyes.
Yes, I just want to bring it to council's attention. This is the road that I think it's mentioned in the description, that because of the amount of trucking that went on, this road was finished a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I don't even, parts of it were just a year ago. And then the trucking, this is a tar and chip road, basically destroyed the road. So now we're going to be putting in another $300,000. I know we're hoping to recoup that money. But again, it's just a shame that this road got destroyed in the process of moving dirt to Welland. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else on that matter? Seeing none, guide rail replacement. Point Avenue South reinstatement of the shoreline protection and road. Um, 2021 road reconstruction program. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I had a question on that if I could.
Go ahead, Your Worship.
So does this project cover what the anticipated cost will be with respect to shoreline protection, or is that another aspect?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is another aspect. Our estimate out of last year's storm to reinstate this road to its previous condition and build some resiliency into significant weather events was upwards of $2 million.
So if I might, Chair, have we done any design work on that, or are we contemplating any design work with respect to those costs, which would put us in a position where we might be able to apply for upper level funding if a program arises?
So this covers primarily design with a bit of construction in there. As you're aware, this section of Point Avenue Road is essentially a gravel road, and it's even worse after Sunday's storm. So the primary goal is to get a hard cap back on it, build some climate or weather resiliency in there, and also facilitate design for the full protection system.
If I might, Chair, so when would we contemplate doing some design work to put us in a position where we know what we need to do in order to provide for adequate shoreline protection with respect to this road, so that we don't keep having to do what we've been doing the last several years, year after year after year?
So out of last year's storm, we retained an engineer to do two things. One, give us estimates on what it would cost to restore, but also give us estimates to build some resiliency in there. So we do have, we'll call it preliminary or pre-design done. And it's taking that document and converting that into a detailed design. So we've got an idea of what we want to do.
So Mr. Chair, is there some reason why we wouldn't, since we know this is going to be a recurring event, is there any reason why we wouldn't be trying to do the design work now rather than later?
Welsh?
The funding here is for detailed design on that.
That includes the shoreline protection?
Yes.
Okay, that was my first question. All the rest wouldn't have been necessary. Thank you.
Anybody else? Marina, Councillor Butler? You have to unmute there, Councillor Butler.
I'm sorry, I was
Okay, it's all good.
unmuted to begin with. I apologize. Is this the area where the residents were experiencing extreme flooding? Is that what this pertains to? No?
No.
Okay.
No, through you, Mr. Chair, this is just due to the destruction of the road from the last Halloween storm, the Halloween 2019 storm.
All right, thank you.
Chair, if I could though, the one project that we just approved some work on, which is Wildwood at the top of that screen, that is in the area where the flooding in Point Avenue has been taking place.
Any further questions on this? Then we'll move on to the 2021 road reconstruction program. And the Birdie and concession sign rebuild. Nothing. The road resurfacing program. The bridge and culvert replacement. Dominion Road reconstruction. Okay. 2021 sidewalk repair program. Point Avenue Road storm. Erie Beach area storm drainage. Shirley Road flooding. Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to see this in the budget because of the ongoing problems that are associated with Shirley Road. So thank you for adding that into the budget.
Anybody else?
Chair, could I just ask, is
You certainly can.
is this going to be sufficient money for some of the solutions that we think may be available to us?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, likely not. We should have our situation report done by the end of the year. That's what our consultant is driving at. I wanted to put this in the budget just to commit council to at least a modicum of money right now, depending on what comes out of the pre-design report and what's approvable. It will likely be quite a bit higher.
So, Chair, I'm just wondering whether we know that there's going to be work that needs to be done there. Mr. Walsh has identified through the consultant some options that are available. And I'm just wondering whether we shouldn't be making sure that there's adequate money rather than have to deal with this on a budget amendment or whatever. I'm just wondering whether, and I have no idea, is 200,000, 250,000, does that help at all, Mr. Waltz? Does that get us in the right direction?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Honestly, Mr. Mayor, the answer could be 50,000. It could be $1 million.
Okay, well, I didn't want to hear that answer, but I'm just thinking that if we know that there's going to be, I mean, if it's less than, as an example, if we were to allocate, and I don't know what's in the storm reserve, I don't know whether we've got latitude to put in another couple $100,000, but if we did, and it turned out that the cost of the work is less than that, well, we can always put the money back into the reserve. If it's going to be more, well, then at least we've made some allocation. So I'm just wondering whether this is something that we should be contemplating now, as opposed to waiting until later.
If I may, Mr. Chair, our storm reserves are fairly healthy. I'm not concerned about pulling money from there. My intent is once we get the final final recommendation, we'll come back to council with a report with a detail on costs, and we can allocate then.
Your worship.
So yeah, I'm just thinking about this because I want to make sure that the residents in the area have an understanding that we're serious about wanting to try to address the recurring problem, because there's no doubt in my mind that this, and there's about 3 or 4 other flooding issues that we have in this town, they're not going away unless climate change somehow disappears like the coronavirus was supposed to in May. And so I don't think that's going to happen. So is there any reason, Mr. Chair, to either Mr. Walsh, Mr. Jansen, Mr. Cookett, all 3 of them, why we couldn't amend this to say $250,000 from the storm reserve?
Okay, so I guess we'll talk to the guy with the money, I guess. Jonathan, you want to give that a whirl?
Chair to Mayor Redekop. Director Walsh is quite right. This reserve, I don't have the forecast open with me sharing my screen with the presentation, but I believe it is forecasted to stay to be on the up and up over the forecasted term for this reserve. So funding is available. Our approach has been, like he said, if his initial estimate is to have a minimal funding, we do have that latitude at the time of award or the report to increase it. But I understand what you're trying to communicate with this. So those are my comments.
Your worship.
Yeah, so I'd like to hear from both Mr. Walsh and Mr. Cookett.
Okay, so we'll go to Mr. Walsh and then we'll go to Mr. Cookett.
On with respect to the residents in the area, I think they know we have their attention on this. We are committed to these reports, and I think further action. I think my point in not adjusting the budget right now is we'll likely have to budget or have to amend the budget later anyways. So I'd just rather do it once.
Can we hear from Mr. Cookett?
Now, Mr. Cookett's next.
Yeah, to Mayor, I would either way. I mean, if our storm reserve was not healthy, I would suggest we not do that. But if it's council's wish to increase that, at this point, we're just guessing at what those costs are. As according to Mr. Walsh, we have no idea at this point. So we do have to come back and likely ask for more money. But you know, if you were to increase it, I would increase it to 200. I wouldn't take it beyond that.
Okay. So I think that's fair enough, and I appreciate the fact that we don't really know and we're somewhat shooting in the dark. But the residents that live in that area, and I think that they believe that we're trying to do what we can. But I think if we were to up this to $200,000, and I'd like to move that we amend it to $200,000. We know that it's likely going to cost more or may cost more, and we may have to amend it later. But I think that it's important for us to communicate to the residents there that we as a council understand the concerns there, and we know that we have to do some work there. We've been doing work, and this is in no way is to suggest that Mr. Walsh and his team haven't moved this ball a fair distance and are in a position where they have been able to identify some options as to what to do and are now just contemplating the best option. So and because we've got the reserves available, and this doesn't have an impact at this point on the levy, I'd like to move that we amend the amount to $200,000 for the 2021 budget.
Any comments or questions from councilors on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Carry. Jonathan, you're keeping track of the numbers over there, right?
You got it.
Okay. So let's move to storm sewer repairs, 2021 storm sewers. Comments or questions? 10th Avenue ditching. West Main Street storm sewer replacement.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had some
Yep.
comments about the 10th Avenue
Okay.
ditching. Sorry,
We'll go back.
No, that's fine. I just I want to just make a quick comment about and just to mention some of the other things I did when this motion came up. I'm very pleased that this is included here. I think it's going to move forward. Hopefully, I don't say anything that changes that. But the residents in that neighborhood have been very, very concerned about this. As I mentioned, it's a weird situation where this was constructed in the 1990s, but with a rural cross section. And hopefully, this will go some of the ways to rectifying the issues that, at least in my opinion, probably shouldn't have existed in the first place. But this will be a big step in getting that rectified. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we'll get back to West Main Street and Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I'm just wondering the timing on this. Was this at some point supposed to happen sooner and then got moved back? Because I know that part of West Main Street was done about 6 years ago. And I'm just wondering whether the time frame on this has changed over the last few years.
Mr. Walsh, can you tell us that?
But through you, Mr. Chair, it's quite the opposite, actually. It was quite a bit later by development charge estimates. When we look at these development charge projects, we tend to time them for near the end of housing construction in there. It's been a great boom for building in the Village Creek subdivision, which along with the Ott Street or Ott Road projects noted earlier allow us to move this forward.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Then we'll move on to the Bay Beach Municipal Drain. The Keelsville Drain. The Elm Street Water Main. Infrastructure leak detection. Water meter replacement program. The E.J. Freeland flat roof replacement. Fire Station 5 decontamination showers. Fire Station number 3 decontamination showers. Town Hall renovation building department. The E.J. Freeland Center HVAC replacement. Fire Station 5 mechanical replacement. Town Hall heat and air. Central Library asphalt replacement. Wayfinding signage, Friendship Trail. Engineering pickup truck. Fire pickup truck. And then there's a 2021 fire pickup truck as well.
So Chair, can I just get clarification
Yes, you can.
on the fire truck? So the one says 2019 fire pickup truck, that's F19219.
Right.
So where's the 219 come from? 2019.
Mr. Walsh?
That's when the truck was originally slated to be replaced, was 2019.
So it's been deferred for 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, it's deferred 2 years because of our excellent maintenance program. We're able to stretch these vehicles out beyond their expected service life when we buy them.
That's very commendable, Chair, if I might comment. And I think we've got excellent staff working on these vehicles and our equipment. And of course, as long as we can keep these vehicles operating and they're not costing a lot of money, I think that's excellent because it's a savings to the taxpayers. And so, Mr. Walsh, you and your team are to be commended.
So we're moving. Okay, so we're at the 2021 fire pickup truck. And 2021 roads dump plow truck. Roads backhoe. Two-ton asphalt hot box.
Chair, I had a question on that.
Okay.
So this is a replacement for a smaller hot box that didn't perform as expected. What did it not do that we had hoped that it would?
So the smaller one, I think we may have been misled on the types of materials we could feed into it. It's known that the smaller one is known as an asphalt recycler. We were under the impression that we could take old excavated asphalt, dump it in there, and melt it again and reapply it, and that simply wasn't the case. As well, we had some health and safety issues with the operation of it. It was a propane-fired unit that did cause a couple of incidents. So this one, we can load it up with fresh asphalt at the plant in Port Colborne, come back and do a day's worth of potholing, whereas the other one, even if we were to put in fresh asphalt, we'd have to make 2 trips, so it's much more efficient.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and then we got the 2021 roadside mowing boom arm. And that's the end of that, Your Worship.
Well done, Chair. Now you just have to get the report passed.
Right. So does somebody like to move the report?
I believe it's been moved, but there would be a change in the numbers because Appendix 1
That's right.
would be up an additional 150,000. So maybe Mr. Jansen can confirm that would be $7,474,735.
Through Chair to Mayor Redekop, I'm just checking to see which one it is. It is preliminary, yes.
Yes,
So it's
it's in
recommended.
appendix. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So we're adding $150,000. That's correct.
So 7.
So
What was the end of it?
7,474,735.
Correct.
Okay, so the other one doesn't change, all right, Jonathan?
That's right.
So can I have a mover for this? Oh, you've got a mover. Okay.
To move it as amended.
Move it as amended. Who was the mover? I missed it.
I moved it, Chair.
Oh, okay. So now you just want me to read the recommendation?
I suppose that would be appropriate.
Okay, so moved by Mayor Redekop that council approves the 2021 preliminary capital budget of $7,474,735 as per Appendix 1 to report number CBC 01-2021 and direct staff to submit the bylaw for council approval on December 14th, 2020. And further, that council defers approval of the balance of the 2021 budget of $9,367,935 as per Appendix 2 to report number CBC 01-2021 to February 22nd, 2021 with consideration of the 2021 general levy budget bylaw. And further, that council approves the exclusion of amortization from the 2021 operating budget as required by Ontario Regulation 28409. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. So the date of our next meeting will be Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. We'll have all the excitement of the water and wastewater operating budget and user fees analysis. I know I look forward to this as much as everybody else. And B, Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021, the library general levy operating budget and assessment analysis. And C, Wednesday, February 10th, 2021, if required. Motion to adjourn? Councillor Duke.
Councillor Duke, sorry. I got carried away, sorry. So we're going to vote on that, Chair?
Yep, all in favor? Carrie, you're out of here.
Good night, all.